please, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus! Oh! He does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera! The man, the myth, the beast! Zywoo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3, 4, and 5. And oh my God, Zywoo! Unbelievable!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, as I write out this tweet announcing that the stream is live and that we're going to jump right into the config news because that just dropped right as we're going into it. It's another episode of By the Numbers. So welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight on this fine evening. And Thorin, how are you doing, dude? Have you had a good week since last we spoke?
Yeah, in general. Like, if people don't remember, at the beginning of the year, I was actually sort of like a little bit under the weather. Like, I think like a lot of people, I had some sort of like a cold or a flu. And it was one of those ones where it wasn't even that bad. Like, yeah, you lacked energy. But it's more like, I had like a lingering after effect genuinely for about like a week or two, it felt like. So even though I still put out some work, like luckily I had, to be fair, I had gone ham as fucking December. Like, so I had all those reflections stored up. So luckily I was in like the perfect spot actually to just sort of chill for a little bit. So bear in mind, you know me, I'm usually pretty like, I usually do actually unironically do like a video a day. So I think it's good to just have a bit of time off, sort of. And like you, I've just been watching the games again, mate. I've just actually been sort of being a fan for a bit and just enjoying the matches and sort of getting my passion back again, as it were.
Exactly. I mean, because last week we were kind of talking about that, how like we've kind of drifted a little bit away from it. And I was talking about that this morning on my stream as well, where I was just, you know, like there's a few guys in the chat who are just like, you know, are you still watching all the matches all the time? And I'm just like, I tune in now. I'm really selective. You know, it's like I'm tuning in for FaZe, or I'm tuning in for very specific matches that where I'm a fan of particular players, or there's a storyline in particular that I'm interested in seeing develop. G2, I've been watching a lot of G2 this blast, you know, for example, because I thought that they were going to be the team to beat. And they certainly are living up to it. They're just thrashing everybody. So, you know, it's like there's certain things. But yeah, I get what you mean. Like I took a bit of time this week as well to just kind of sit back and watch some games and not worry too much about anything. And it's been fun, man. It's been nice, enjoyable. But dude, like I get what you're talking about. Like I feel like there was definitely a variant of there were some variants going around, man, because there was a lot of coughing. Like my wife got sick, I got sick. We were all coughing for like weeks. It wouldn't go away, all that sort of stuff, you know. So it's like definitely, I feel like there's a few things making the rounds because I feel like in the last 6 months I've gotten more sick than I have in the last 10 years. I don't know what's going on. If it's because we're all staying home so much and we're not traveling out as much, you know, or whatever it is. But I feel like I've gotten more colds in like the last 6 months than freaking as long as I can remember. It's crazy. So it is what it is, I guess, right? Let's just hop right into this config news, because this config news just dropped right before we go live here, where roster update from NIP. Welcome to the dojo config. So they must have been aware of his history in combatives. He has made his way. He has made his way to the dojo in more ways than one. So, dude, I mean, did you have like? I figure we could just literally read through this because.
By the way, just to start with the first thing you just said there before we get into
it, go for it.
Even that alone, even though, like, obviously that's just them, like, awkwardly trying to force the branding that Nipper Ninjas, right? Which never really, by the way, I've always thought this from the beginning of that fucking team when it was just a clan org in, like, fucking 2000 or something. That angle is the least fun angle. Like, it's a funny name, but once you become good at the game, it's just a name. It's like Forrest or Get Right. You don't think how weird the spelling is. But the idea that they actually think that actual branding is good, like, because the reason why, like in the modern day, it's okay, it sort of works. Because let's be real, like G2 claim they're samurai. It's like, I don't really know in what way you're samurai. You know, none of this marketing really works. Evil geniuses are like, we're evil. But here's the problem that doesn't work. Like you say, guys, this guy literally was in a scenario where he was beaten to either an inch of his life. Like, what, like 5 months ago now or 4, but maybe don't associate any sort of martial art or violence with him, you know. Crazy idea. Maybe just leave that out of this tweet, because I thought the same thing you did, Sam. Like, yes, welcome to the dojo, fucking cotton blood.
It's like Pai Mei or something, where he's going to be carrying the buckets of water up the stairs, and Pai Mei is going to just be breaking his ankles. Sure. Which one was it again? I'll do the other one. We'll toughen you up. Holy, yeah, dude. I mean, it's just, well, I mean, this is just to be expected from the Nip org. It's not exactly like they have the brightest bulbs in the box over there. But holy moly, dude! And I mean, let's just take a look at this is fresh for me, guys, because I'm just sitting down to the PC. I'm just looking at this.
Only came about half an hour ago anyway, to be fair. But
and well, you know, I was eating dinner. I was eating dinner, but I'm curious about this, right? So you all know by now that we take our player health very serious. We take player health, not even our player health very seriously. When we're doing our jobs well, our players know that too, and there's mutual trust that allows us to notice and address issues quickly. I'm already
here's another thing that is mental in the context of someone writing that paragraph out. Think about the way that sentence ended. It goes, there's mutual trust that allows us to notice and address issues quickly. You have literally, ninjas in pajamas, you just come off the longest inactive period ever for a great player who didn't retire. That is mental. Like, you actually, the joke is the reality is 180 factually opposite of what you're saying now. But let's be real. In the modern day, the whole point of PR is just fancy lying in it, you know.
We still don't know. They still haven't addressed Device being on the bench as long as he has. They still haven't addressed any of it. They just kind of were like, actually, let's not talk about that for 6 months.
They got the money. They don't care. They got the money.
Device is at Astralis. It's weird how that works. Well, okay, fine. Fair enough then. So, okay, next paragraph. You also know, undoubtedly, that we always protect our players' privacy in these matters. So this part, clearly, yes. So this part of the announcement will be very brief. Hampus has spent the last few days consulting with our performance director, trolls, and medical professionals, and we've agreed that he needs a break from esports competition. We've assessed that in order to ensure that he has the time and space needed to get well, Hampus will take the rest of the spring season off with our full support.
Right. One thing we have to say here, because we're obviously going to talk about this topic, is when someone gives no information, it's not by the way that you have carte blanche, you can say anything, but at the same time, like, there is an open area to speculate. Like, we don't have any behind the scenes info on this. Because here's the problem with this, Semmler. I don't know about you, but when I heard the story that at Blast, Hampus had to leave and then be replaced, I just assumed it was something like either he's ill, that's the obvious first one, or something like a family tragedy has happened, something like, you know, someone's died, someone's ill, maybe they've got terminal problems, something that obviously, like past instances where you come away. But I have to say, the way that's written, the implication there, Semmler, is it's him. There's something with him, and it's even implied by the way, this is by the way how stupid it is that they dare to say that stupid thing about privacy. Because the second that you put this part here, Semmler, our performance director, and then you put and medical professionals, right? Let's be real, guys. Presumably, think about it logically. This is where Nip's fucked up completely. They've actually inadvertently given the game away, Semmler. If it was a medical issue, like, for example, I'll give you a random one. Maybe he has a kidney stone or something, you know, something that actually would take you out for a little bit of time. Why would you be talking to the performance director? If it's the performance director and medical professional, the implication, I'm speculating, but it's just the way this is phrased, is it some sort of mental problem? It's like burnout. By the way, the joke would be it's something like that. It's just something in the vein of,
or it's like you say, it's some kind of condition that keeps him from being able to compete, i.e. kidney stone, something that comes on Swift, right? Because he was still here at this event. He was still starting this event. I mean, granted, his performance wasn't stellar, and so when he did bow out, people were like, okay, maybe that explains his performance, because at the end of last year, he was looking pretty sharp on the team. He was looking pretty good, and there was definitely a drop in performance on his side. But it is just that where, I mean, the Nip side of things, they are just that, whatever.
They're slimy. They're just slimy, man.
And also just incompetent. I don't know. Incompetent is probably the best way to put it, because it's like, as you say, if you want to keep things quiet, if you want to keep things private, you just say performance director trolls, period. Because then it could be anything. It's a performance question. I mean, that could be any number of things.
We even learned from the Nip thing that when you do that, you get all the power. Because in the modern day, the ultimate sin, you know this, is just to dare to question someone's mental health. Like, you're not allowed to have an opinion on it in the modern day. So it's actually even the ultimate smokescreen to get out with whether it's true or not, isn't it? You know?
It's just fantastically stupid. But whatever. This is what I expect from the Nip organization. And we've agreed that he needs a break from esports competition. Well, good for you. We've assessed that in order to ensure that he has the time and space needed to get well, Hampus will take the rest of the spring season off with our full support. Okay. Stability is an important factor in building a winning team. And as soon as this situation came to light, stability is definitely, like, when it comes to Nick.
I know, how dare you even write that and publish it? Stability is an important factor. Well, then by definition, you've never had a winning team by your own fucking logic. You have never built a winning team except at the beginning of CSGO. This is mental, because the joke is,
dude, it keeps going. And
because of this, by the way, remember this as well, Semmler. It wasn't just Device. Remember when Device was there? They had the ZTN ZTR and LNZ guys cycling in and out of the team. The joke is this team's never had stability. That's why it actually sucks, by the way, as an aside. Even though when we get to it in a second, I do think the config is a pretty cool one. Obviously, he's a high-skilled player. At the same time, what sucks about this is what you just said. Dude, another thing I've been waiting for is I wanted to see Hampus playing a real team. I've just seen him playing these weird teams that always have a different fifth player for, like, what, 2 years now or something mental. This is ridiculous. So, yeah, keep going.
Okay, so to find a long-term, right, so this situation came to light. We set out to find a long-term solution, That's
a key phrasing as well, yep.
That allows Hampus to take his time without impacting the momentum we're building into 2023.
By the way, you can stop there a second, because that alone is also nonsense as well. Like, I'll tell you right now, everyone, think as a fan, right? I'll give you the best example ever. Does everyone remember what Na'Vi was like when they had Boomich? Now, does everyone remember what Na'Vi's been like since Boomich left? Notice how it's night and day, and it's only one player, and we would all have argued, remember, that was the least important player. This guy's a major player in NIP. Like, there is no momentum to carry on Semmler. Like, the momentum actually, yeah, they get reset. Like, if he comes back, they can start again with the momentum of Hampus. Essentially, they're not doing that. They're building a new squad without him. And the joke is, as you're saying, because they're actually laying it on thick and putting stuff like long terms, this actually implies, by the way, they're actually going to have a 6-man roster, as far as I can tell. You know? Someone's going to play for the spot.
We're in the exact same situation as Device all over again. Yep. By the way this is reading, it makes me think we're in a Device 2.0. All right, so these are.
Oh, and by the way, think about this, Semmler, because this is an obvious thing to say. Device created the precedent that Hampus can now use. If you think about this, Semmler, if you sat there playing the whole year and you're like, when's this guy coming back? And they were like, that's not relevant. He has a doctor. Well, then maybe you go to a doctor and you go, you know what? Actually, I can't. You know what? I'm not saying you do it frivolously, by the way, but maybe you actually have a time when you're feeling bad and you go, well, fuck it. If that guy had a year off, I can have a few months at least. Can't I have 2 months or something? That's going to be logical. Someone else can claim that if a Device is allowed to do it, guys.
So there's a precedent. You're arguing precedent now at this Device situation, and that's it. Now,
yeah, sure. Because how could Nip say no is my point, you know what I mean? It's like what happened when Zipnix took his time off. You know when Glaive and Zipnix both took time off?
Yes.
But I think
wasn't it like, notes.
If you remember, it was like Zipnix. I think this is the way around it went. I think it was Glaive got the doctor's note, and then Zipnix did. I don't think he even had the doctor. One of the two had it, but then the other one didn't, but they just got it as well. So that's what's implied to me, dude. It's like anyone in Nip can say this now, if you have a good reason, obviously.
Of course. Okay, so let's see. These are big flip-flops to fill, but we
just trying to be silly with that, I assume. Keep going.
In a very serious press release, we're going to keep being silly.
I don't get that. Okay.
But we've been able, they're all over the place, but we've been able to secure our top pick for the 5th spot. We owe a great thanks to all the ecosystem partners that pulled together to solve this situation in record time. So we welcome a new ninja. Christian Config Wieneke joins the roster right away, donning our jersey for the first time on February 1st in the IEM Katowice 2023 play-in. Onwards and upwards.
I feel like the part that's going to get missed here, that's why we were very careful to hit like the big words very hard, is if you don't read this press release and you just hear Hampus had to leave Nips, or if you just hear Hampus is ill and Config's playing, you'll think it's like for Blast, where Heroic had him for Blast World Finals and now FaZe wanted him now. You're going to think it's a standard scenario. The way that last sentence is written and the way that the other one started, where it said about like a long-term, it actually implies he's just a full-time member of NIP now. Like Config is in NIP, guys, which is also amazing, by the way, because if we want to get into the actual move itself, like, let's be real. This is something I talked about last year, where even though I know the moment that all the drama was happening, and Richard put his video out and we all thought about the full consequence of what Config had done, in that moment, it felt like, oh, his career's over. Like, who's going to pick him up? I did tell you guys this. There will always be someone in esports will be willing to say, so you mean if I look past his problems and only look at him in the server, I get a competitive advantage? There'll always be someone who'll take that deal. In fact, look at what's just happened recently. Guys, like FaZe Clan, if Rain was really going to take extended time off, was maybe going to give this guy a few months. Like, he actually is going to get into a top team. Like, he's already in one, let's be real. And as much as, like, look, Hampus is a very good player, and I don't think they're a one-for-one fit, but Config is basically like, there's not many top 10 teams couldn't use a player like this, in my opinion. So I think it'll be good. I think it's going to be fucking fire, mate.
For sure, for sure. But I mean, the obvious. I mean, given the context now that we've seen just how well FaZe performed, just how well Esatag performed, it was a point that was brought up in this Blast group where it's just like, well, if FaZe play against NIP, then there's conflict of interest because Esatag is standing in on FaZe Clan, and yet and yet he's still signed to NIP,
and he's under contract with NIP. Yes,
he's under contract with NIP. So the other question is, well, if Hampus needs to take a break, you've already got Esatag on contract. Why aren't you just playing Esatag?
I mean, it implies you're going to sell him, doesn't it? Yeah. No, the problem with that as well is like, if people don't know, let me think how to phrase this.
Okay.
Basically, the problem I think with this whole move is I don't really know if I buy like that, because that's the point that you're making there. Essentially, what this implies is there's no context they were ever going to have Tag back in the lineup. Like even someone being injured. The joke is I mean, it's also a good excuse to sign Config though. That is another point, because think about it, right? He's just been in the news with all the standing and FaZe wanted him. It just means your fans are going to think it's a slam dunk. It sounds like, wait, FaZe want him and we're going to get him. That does sound good. You know what I mean? That's I guess just to play into the fan angle, that does make it sound like a better move. But as if instead you said this, Semmler, don't worry guys, Hampus is out, but Tag's back. Like, mate, I don't mind Tag. I think he does a good job. But I know he's not a sexy player, is he? Like, he's not the player people are like, oh my God, he's a workman.
Sexy player, but given the context right now and how he performed for FaZe in this on short notice, as a stand-in, fucking smashed everybody. He had a sick, I mean, I can't remember the rating off the top of my head because I haven't checked like in that last match. But I mean, dude, he did terrific in that match against OG. And I'm just sitting here going like, what's the matter with us, Tag? I don't know, like what's going on here? Why aren't you bringing him into the fold? I mean, we have been saying for freaking weeks now that you know, if Config is available for free, no buyout, why, like who when you're trying to make plays to get a good rifler on your team, who isn't making that play to try and get Config in for free, no buyout? It's like, if you want Tag now, you're going to have to go through NIP. You're going to have to buy him off of NIP. He's going to be in some kind of slave contract on NIP now where he has to sit on the bench forever. And then hopefully somebody's going to come along and buy him out. So you kind of feel for Tag in that sort of scenario because they're absolutely going to be looking to do that with him. Config is out in the wind right now. No buyout. I'm surprised that it's NIP and not somebody else that managed to.
No, but here's why for NIP it's more genius to do it, because they've actually baked in a more genius angle that no one will have thought of. Remember, they're not actually gambling, Semmler. That Config has to be their permanent player and this lineup has to work. If Hampus decides in 3 months that he can play again and Config's being a dickhead, he's just benched. And it's not in any drama. You've got 5 players again. You can just go straight back in the server. You can play. It's actually, in a way, it gives them actually like sort of a safety net, isn't it? You know, another team wouldn't have that. If he had have joined, except for the Rain one, if he like temporarily replaced that. But if he joined a team full time, then you just live or die whether he makes it, don't you? So I think for PR reasons, this could be a good way if they need to sort of like rizzle dizzle him out if he is an
exactly. I like the way your mind works, because you now have managed to pick him up, put him on contract, and like you say, if in 3 months it doesn't work out, you put him on the bench and then you sell him. Even for, it's just gravy at that point. I mean, whatever, you had to pay for his salary, but you could probably get a buyout that'll cover his salary, and then at least you break even, if not make a little bit of profit. So I mean,
no, it's a bag
move. Could be actually, I mean, as you point this out, this really is a NIP move. You know, the ninjas lurking in the shadows always, you know, they can't write a PR announcement to save their lives, but you know, they can come up with some business moves to make some money. So good on them.
I think this is a fire move though, because think about it, right? Obviously the main storyline with NIP is the head trick guy going to become some super dominant AWP, because we're all hoping he can be really good. If he actually ends up being at all good, by the way, it doesn't have to be as good as a Monacy. If he just does the sort of tracking level of a Dexter, a fucking wonderful Ellie, and these players who were pretty good and they were right on the brink, NIP look like, even with Config, they could be really dangerous, mate. Like imagine Lexi B with fucking Config. Like there's going to be some firepower in this team.
And considering how they weren't looking half bad, even at this event, they weren't looking half bad. I mean, Na'Vi are not looking their best, to be fair. They're dropping maps, but I mean, NIP are taking maps off of Na'Vi. They dispatched a Big, looked really confident taking Big out of the picture. That was super smooth. So I mean, yeah, no, NIP. It's like NIP are in that space right now where it's like a 15 to 10 kind of ranking, where you know you're in the middle of the pack right now. You're able to get rid of the gatekeepers like Big, you know, who are going to be separating out the chaff from the guys who are actually competing, but you're still, you know, not quite there to take out a top team. And so yeah, I mean, if you bring Config into the mix, it just makes me, I mean, I don't know, you know, it's just Hampus was actually performing pretty well.
No, he was one of their best players. Let's be real. He was. That's why I say it's not for me. Like that's why I made the example of the Boomich one. Upgrade. To me, the Boomich one's a bit like, that's not as big a player to remove, but like, fucking hell, look at the effect out on Na'Vi. So the problem is as well, like I actually thought particularly his style of play, if you're an IGL, that's like a dream player to have, where they just cause like fucking chaos on the map and they hit every time, and like you love that shit. That's what you want as an IGL. You don't have to control that, then he does that, you know?
Was the one that I was thinking Brolan? I mean, I feel like, I don't know, do you take Brolan out and you bring Config in instead of Brolan, and you keep Hampus and you keep Rez and you keep going from there?
Well, here's the thing, Semmler. They have a saying. That's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, because now they can bench him out and they can, Hampus wants to come back.
Because as you say, there's another angle people haven't thought about. Everyone else is just going to think the 1-for-1, right? Do you keep Hampus or do you keep Config? You just nailed it there, Semmler. Bear in mind, remember, it's not a Swedish team. It is a team that speaks English. If they get to a scenario where Hampus can return and Hampus is good, then if Brolan isn't that good, as you say, maybe we upgrade Brolan to Config. Like, Config is better than Brolan, isn't he, guys? Like, I know Brolan had those years where he definitely had some flashes a few years ago, but he hasn't been that great since he joined NIP, has he? He's been a bit.
The other thing is, though, like, I think Brolan's got to be tugging at his collar a little bit right now because, I mean, no joke, dude. Esatag looked phenomenal this tournament standing in for FaZe. So I'm still wondering, like, listen, if you can get that out of Esatag, you get Config on there, you got Rez, who's actually doing pretty well, you get Headtrick in a space where he can actually perform. I mean, all of a sudden, NIP are looking like a team to be reckoned with. You got Alexi B calling the shots. I mean, it feels like you could actually put in a phenomenal roster with this with what they've got to work with, and then hey, Hampus needs to come back. You bring him back in. I don't know.
I personally think NIP's whole core of players is actually mad underrated because you look what they did last year when they were like that, like scuffed lineup. Sure, it's not the Hampus lineup now, but they're going to have a real lineup now. They've got an AWPer now finally. So, like, the cool thing for me is I feel like this is the team that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if in, like, 2 months this team actually, like, is fucking, like, in a dark horse for the major or something, man. Like, I think they've got some good pieces. I think they've got some pretty good pieces.
This is, I mean, cool. It bodes well. It's exciting. It's exciting to see. All right, let's just, we might as well just actually, I keep mentioning FaZe and Esatag standing in for FaZe, but we might as well actually follow the story of how we got to that point because that was the big, last week, pretty much the day after Friday last week, is where it all kicked off. As far as I know,
these are the facts.
Or no, right? Thursday last week.
You can correct me if you saw something differently because I know there was one detail people did get wrong. Here's what I heard happened, right? I don't have it all, at least some of it's in DMs. I'm going to go fucking check it now for a talk show. Basically, as far as I know, it went along the lines of like, FaZe themselves claim that they like asked Blast, like, can we as an emergency use Config as like our substitute? And I believe technically Config had been registered by Heroic because Heroic used him at the World Finals, as people remembered. But I think there was even then an intimation, I don't know if you saw this, that like maybe Config himself didn't know Heroic had registered him as a sub. Like maybe they just did it as sort of like, you know,
what is the
and then what I heard was
everything the players say with a grain of salt.
Yes, that's true.
Of course, you know, it's like the players.
Some of this might not be factual, exactly. This is what's claimed at least, right? So it's claimed essentially already shenanigans there. Like first thing I'm asking, which no one else was asking, is why are Heroic registering players who haven't agreed to be a sub out of it? That's already one, but no one got into that because there was so much drama. So if you bring it back, then it becomes that even though supposedly FaZe were initially told they could use Config as an emergency stand-in, then somehow that was like retracted and now they couldn't. And so then last minute, obviously they had to go instead and get the person they got right, which was Esatag.
Yeah.
Now the reason the Esatag one in itself is confusing is because at the end of the same Blast group stage, NIP needed a stand-in. So then everyone was like, then why aren't they using Esatag? But that's where an interesting detail comes. Apparently, Esatag was never registered by NIP as the sub. That's what I heard somewhere. And if you notice this Maxter guy who came in, I'm assuming that's who they had registered. So essentially that also, let's fuck implies. It just says they never, under any context, plan on using Esatag against Semmler. So this is the last detail to mention that is dodgy. Is I understand in that situation, right, there's no perfect solution there beyond like, look, is there anyone who's not registered at all who can come and play as a stand-in? That would be the perfect scenario. But if you're going to pick one, right, here's what I don't get, Semmler. There's people who actually thought this resolved the matter. This took the same scenario and made it worse. Beforehand, as you say, Config is not a player under contract to anyone. Yeah, he's registered as a sub for Heroic. I don't think he'll ever play another game for Heroic. It's not like he has some conflict of interest where he should want Heroic to win. I mean, he's not even going to be playing them directly, but you know what I mean? He shouldn't like want them to win. There's no conflict of interest with Config joining. He's only been registered and not even apparently under his own awareness as a sub. He's not in Heroic. So actually, FaZe adding him is just about the emergency sub rule. Are they allowed to use it? Was it not done right? What's mad is the solution that you can instead take Esatag contracted to a different player, a different team.
Yeah.
That's mental because now you've inserted a conflict of interest into
indeed.
what already is a scuffed scenario. Like I'm now using someone who might be incentivized to actually lose the game, guys. Like,
indeed.
You know what I mean? Like this happened basically 2 years ago, if you remember, during all the Flashpoint shit. Do you remember during the Flashpoint 3, the one where it was the RMR, the EU RMR, there was that team where NBK was like on contract for OG, but he played with that team double pony, if you remember. And there was the potentially they even could have played each other if they'd have both like won the first match, but they didn't. And they did the same thing. They did the same stupid fucking ruling where they said, yes, you can use someone under contract to the other org. Every dickhead fan said that stupid thinking of like, why would anyone risk getting fat? Guys, every fucking coach risks being banned forever. That happened. Stop that stupid logic. That logic is like, why would a criminal do a crime when he could go to prison? He doesn't plan on being caught and he wants the money. And he's also not really smart and good at business, hence why he's making bad decisions, like doing armed crime, you fucking clown. It's the way they all sit there like they're some perfect fucking entity. Like, I always make my decisions. Like, I think through every possible scenario and I always pick the most logical and correct. No human behaves that way. We're fucking animals, got instincts. You're just doing shit based on stimuli. So anyway, to bring it back, the point is, the maddest part about all of this is you've done the same thing again, because if you remember, the reason I bring that case up is they famously thought that, it was actually Flashpoint this time, thought that ruling made sense as well, Semmler. But of course, he wouldn't play if you played his whole team. Right, here's what makes that even more mad, you dumb cunts. You've now made the conflict of interest even worse, because now if they end up playing against his former team, they get an easier game, you fucking idiots! You imbeciles! It's bad enough that if he played in the game, he might throw it. You're just ensuring the game got easier for the team that he's already contracted to. Spoiler, why is he fucking contracted? The whole thing should never have been. I genuinely think this whole thing was a travesty. And the worst part of it all, Semmler, for real, is I think the reason this was all made this way is because there was no time left. It was like, wasn't this like the day before they were going to play the games? There was no time and they had to just make a decision. And as usual, TOs often don't, unfortunately, Semmler, look at the rules and think through what they tried to do was this. Remember, Blast's customer, I'll make this point very clearly, Blast's customer is the team orgs. That is their customers, those Blast partner teams. So this looks to me somewhere like Blast only cared about what the partner teams did. They didn't care about conflict of interest. Or they just thought, right, what's the best way to make it better between Nip and... They just sorted out the kids in the play box, in my opinion.
There's quite a few things on this whole topic.
Jump in.
But so one thing that stands out is that clearly it seems to me, looking in from the outside, that it's multiple people handling communication with the teams. And so that is how you could potentially have this fuck up where perhaps one person at Blast is saying one thing and another person at Blast is saying another thing, and never the twain shall meet. And this is how you wind up in this sort of scenario.
You do think to yourself, there should be a guy and his job is like, I'm the one who makes the decision. And
yes,
you talk to that guy, you know what I mean?
You would think that.
Because I know what you mean.
After all,
the door I didn't open, you notice, Semmler, I just reported what had been told. But the door I didn't open is the one that you've suggested, which you can talk about now, which is, I'll tell you, even if players are cool guys, they lie so fucking habitually on these topics. For example, when they say that, Semmler, here's how I, as the fucking policeman interviewing them, would instantly break them. You know, when they go, but I asked Blast and they said, yes, who's Blast? Who did you ask at Blast? You know what I mean? These are the questions, as journalists don't ask. These are the questions that are important. The question is, was it some fucking admin? Was it the guy just went on the shuttle with the or was it actually the main guy who, as you're saying, whoever's job it is to decide these, I assume top tournament admin referee guy or something, or tournament director or something. That's who should make the decision.
The reason why I want to bring that up is because Blast in their own statement pointed that out, saying that, miscommunication on our side of things, and we're going to take the steps necessary to address this for the future.
Did you see that, Semmler? Did you see my response to that? Because you know why I went in on Blast on that one? The way that was framed there, Semmler, makes it sound like it was Blast who fucked up. It makes it sound like maybe someone who wasn't qualified told Nip, you can use that play, that'll be okay. And then later found out, shit, we fucked up. Because here's the thing, Semmler, if it had been FaZe, if it had been FaZe who fucked up, TOs don't make it that soft when they phrase it. They would be like, FaZe incorrectly, and then all the hate would go on to FaZe. So the way that was phrased, I know what you're talking about, which made me think that.
Remember that Blast right now are in the bitch position of the scene in the sense that they run basically behind ESL, and take whatever they can get from ESL, and all of their talent is getting poached by ESL now, as half of the Katowice fucking talent roster shows. Like there's nothing helping Blast anymore. They've got nothing. They don't have a leg to stand on. And so they're not exactly going to go burning ships with the fucking teams, because it's like they're literally the only thing they've got now. I mean, they don't have talent to call their own. They have a format and maybe some stream stuff, some cool graphics, whatever. That's Blast. Apart from that, they're ESL light. It's tragic the way that it's gone. But as far as so that's why I don't think that they would come down to like a ton of breaks on any of the teams or any of the players, because I don't think they can afford to take that risk. Because if any of the teams are just like, yeah, okay, fuck you, bye. That's it. Blast are done. They've got nothing. They'll go run Fortnite tournaments for the rest of the time. But they're done in CS if that's how it went. But like to bring it back, there's quite a few points that need to be talked about. And one point that needs to kick off right off the bat is that in the 2022 rulebook that we have access to, that was sent to me by an admin, we have it here when it comes to the team's roster. The team's roster must be submitted to Blast at least 3 weeks prior to the applicable tournament stage. The submitted roster. Save that in respect to teams which qualify for the so-called Blast Premier Showdown and or Blast Wildcard. Blah, 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 blah. The submitted roster must be submitted to Blast within 48 hours of such qualification being confirmed. That's for the showdowns. Blast shall have the right to impose sanctions. Okay. There was another bit here. Only players included on the submitted roster only the players included on the submitted roster are eligible to compete at the applicable tournament stage unless otherwise said by Blast. So this kind of sets up the timeline here, because I know that people are saying, oh,
didn't people imply, I don't know the factual element of this, didn't people imply FaZe had like Olaf as the sub listed or some shit like that?
Yes.
Wasn't that what they said?
That is the thing. And so that's where all of this gets, this is why I'm not willing to say this is all on Blast. It appears that perhaps there was some miscommunication on Blast side where maybe 2 or 3 people were talking to the teams. And so things got crossed up and they don't know what they were saying, whatever, it happens. But I'm willing to place I'm willing to place quite a bit of responsibility on the teams as well, because this is clear as day in the rule books. This was also in the 2020 rule book, 2021 rule book. Like, this is a rule that hasn't changed for a long time, years now. So if you're a top team and you've been competing with Blast for years, by now, whoever the manager is of the team, the coach, whoever's responsibility it is to deal with the org, to deal with the team and the tournament organizer relationship, whoever's in charge of that should know by now, after several years of this same rule book being used, the same rule being used, okay, we need to submit our roster 3 weeks ahead of time. So let's establish that. Now, the reason why we're here is because Rain, God bless him, had a kid. Congratulations. Fucking A, awesome. But that's not something that just drops out of the sky, you know? I'm pretty sure there's a lead up period.
That was one thing I wondered about, mate, is like when you say like emergency sob, the joke is the emergency sob is Rain's child. We knew he was coming 9 months ago. What are you talking about? Like, you know what I mean? I'm with you, Semmler. It's not like they told you like some fucking German DHL driver. You know what? Your child will come anywhere between January 1st and I don't know, December 20th. So stick around all year. Like, it was going to happen within these few months. Like, I agree, Semmler. Like, they could have planned out. And here's one problem I have with this situation from the FaZe side. Look, it's fine to ask. Like, if you ask, hey, can I use config? Because obviously that would be better for you. But I'm always suspicious of that. So I'm like, let's be real. They wouldn't want to use Olaf Meister. He's going to be fucking washed. The real problem, I think, with this move is this. Anytime you don't want to use your real sub, who as far as I know could play, because he's not as good as the guy, because he's not as good as config. Like, that just sounds like you're trying to get an edge. You registered Olaf. I didn't. Play with him if you think he's good.
So that just shows the level of professionalism that the teams are putting on display, because it's not only FaZe, who apparently just submitted the roster with Olaf Meister without even consulting Olaf Meister, because apparently Olaf Meister's birthday was happening this weekend, and he had planned a trip for months ahead. And I have a clip of him, because obviously he was streaming at the time that all this news broke. And so people were going to his stream being like, hey, did you know that you were supposed to be a sub for FaZe? And he's like on the stream, like, no, I had no idea. I'm leaving for my birthday this weekend, guys. Like, if they'd have told me, I would have been able to play, but he was just like, listen, I've got a trip, I'm out. So Olaf didn't know. But then there's also Heroic, who were putting config on as their sub, and apparently config didn't know. I mean, again, we have to take this with a grain of salt, because again,
if that is true though, Semmler, I actually think, look, it shouldn't be a big deal. It's like a very minor thing. There should be like a minor punishment if you do that. Like, how can you register someone who didn't say they wanted to play the tournament?
Right? Because config is just like, well, I didn't know that I was a sub for Heroic either. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on with these teams?
And remember, logically, Heroic has now cost config, who, remember, they are not paying, is not under contract. They've cost him a chance to play in the best team in the world.
Indeed.
The fuck?
Indeed. So that's already a big takeaway.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And then the storyline continues, because then apparently it was within a week of the start date that they said that they asked, according to Twists, where it was like 5-6 days.
Still in it. I know. Come on. What
you know,
emergency?
it's just like, hey, can we use config? And apparently Blast are like, yeah, you can use config. That's fine. And so then, I mean, and then of course, other teams who I guess are familiar with the rule book are like, wait a second, isn't config supposed to be the sub for heroic? Like, how does this work out? And Blast are like, oh shit, that's right. We have a rule book that we've been using for years. How did we get this wrong? How did we fuck this up?
Unprecedented. We've done these things in the past. Exactly. That's what they never do.
Absolute clown fiesta from top to fucking bottom. Teams, tournament organizer, players, it's all fucking clusterfuck. And you're just sitting here going, well, this is the perfect way to start the year off.
I've got a little bomb for you. I've got some info most people in the public don't have.
Oh,
I heard.
Okay.
Spoiler, when I say I heard, it is less sexy. It essentially means I haven't nailed everything down, I haven't folded up everything. I just heard this, but I do have legit sources, better than anyone who's listening to the show. Including, even if you're simple, way better source than you, dick. And I know everything about your career you don't know about, you fucking clown. Like that time when you didn't board that plane where you told SK you were going to fly to Brazil and be in there. Oh, people don't know about that one. Don't worry, there'll be a video coming. So what I'll just say is this. Here's the gem. What I'm going to say is this. The reason why the precedent is so important, Semmler, is I heard previously this is already something that was resolved completely the other way in a similar situation. I've heard previously evil geniuses wanted to play, I think it was a Blast tournament with Kenny S or something as like a player to stand in. And they were told they couldn't because he was contracted to G2. Then Blast turns around and lets fucking Esotag, who was contracted to NIP, play in the FaZe clan. So you've literally taken the same two scenarios and done the opposite.
I'm so tired of this bullshit.
Look, I will say, I already heard that. I don't know that for a fact. But
okay.
It sounds
if that's true.
Sure.
The tongue-in-cheek tweet that I made on Thursday morning was, I want to see Forrest on FaZe now.
Oh, right, there you go. Exactly. That's a good joke. That's a good joke. Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hey. Listen, that would have been sick to see Forrest back in it. He's out there grinding. He's streaming every day. He's playing games. He's keeping sharp. No contract holding him back. Could have brought him in and avoided any conflict of interest if it didn't go perfectly for FaZe and then Nip getting knocked down. How did the bracket actually play out?
Well, if you remember, that's just for seeding for that next phase.
Of course, but if FaZe had lost to OG today, and and Nip beat Astralis, we still could have had the conflict happening. But FaZe are through, and so it worked out. It worked out for Blast. They got lucky. Basically, they got lucky that OG kind of just dropped the ball. To be fair, because OG had their chances. I watched that series. They absolutely had their chances on Mirage, and they weren't able to get it done. And I think that tanked them for Ancient afterwards. But there could have been a world where FaZe get knocked down. OG are going through to the spring finals, and we potentially have yet that conflict again. It's just fascinating, man. It's just fascinating to see that this is still possible with organizations that have years. Like this is it. It's like you're the cream of the crop now. If you're still running S tier tournaments in CS:GO, ESL, Blast, like you have years of experience. You're supposed to be on the ball. Like this stuff should all be ironed out. How is this still happening? Yep. It's fascinating to watch it happen. I mean, great. I mean, it gives us stuff to talk about. So,
the problem is, Semmler, I've got to say, this ties into a classic topic, which is before your time. Me and Richard, unfortunately, even before you joined, mate, we've just discussed to death all these conflict of interest scenarios. And basically the conclusion we come to at the end is this. One, most people genuinely don't know what a conflict of interest is. They don't. They can't even break down the word. Like, spoiler, it's self-contained in the word. It's a conflict of interests. Like, all you have to do is look, what are the multiple interests and why are there a conflict? As soon as you do that, you figure it out. But I'll say the more important thing. It's not just that they don't understand it. I think most people don't think it's a big deal, Semmler, and here's why. Because when I'm saying, but then NBK could just do that. They go, but why would it? They think it's like a real scenario that has to happen. They don't understand that the reason that you watch out for these things and don't let them happen is so that then you never have to wonder, did he throw the game? Did someone... You don't ever have to worry about it because you prohibit it. You stop it happening. Exactly. And like you're saying as well, you make it in the rules so you have all these precedents set. And not only do you look at your rule set, you look at what you did previously, like you're saying. Because as I'm saying, if that's true, that EGG2 story, that's just unfair to EG then. And Kenny S. Why is Kenny S not allowed to play? But Esotag is like, I don't get it, mate. It's just that just sounds whack. you know?
Well, it's all in the moment, and also, I mean, it's not you're not that would require what, some principles or that you're holding to, like, you know, you're going to try and you're going to try and actually follow some kind of consistent thread, and, you know, follow that thread and try and say like, okay, I'm going to make my decisions based on these principles. Actually, fuck that, you know, like, you know, the top team in the world needs something. All right, we're going to bend over backwards and let them have it. It's fine. I mean, they would have let the config thing happen if there weren't other teams who were saying, hey, by the way, there's a rule book. We're all following the rules. Why do they get to not follow the rules, right? So if it weren't for the other teams calling them out, Blast would have been like, this whole situation, like config would have been playing for FaZe, and you know, fuck the rules and fuck everything else. It would have all just happened hunky dory. But now Blast, I mean, I get Blast. Blast are in a tough they're in a tough spot. You know, they're trying to hold on to whatever market share they're allowed to keep, you know, from ESL, and they're just trying to they're trying to keep the teams happy, because they understand now the way that ESL figured it out to get back in the good graces of the community, because nobody seems to remember that ESL were once despised by the community, and ESL could do nothing right until ESL figured out that keeping the players happy is the key to unlocking the love and adulation from the community. So long as you keep the players happy, it doesn't matter what the fuck else you do. So long as you keep the players happy, that's the key. And so Blast are starting to figure that out too, where there's like, maybe we need to do the same thing. Problem is, we're going to wind up in a situation like Dota soon enough, where, you know, the players are going to be kings.
Oh, they're just
going to make demands everywhere, and it's going to become unmanageable, because the players are, you know, the players are going to turn into, I don't know, little. I was about to say little Attilas, but it's not. Like
no, they're like little Lord Fultroy. I know what you mean. Just,
there you go.
The joke is, we actually already went through that, but came through the other side. Cause you remember it was like with the SL and Fallen and fucking Tars and those guys. They used to just make any demand they wanted back in the days, and everyone had to jump to attention and run again, like some fucked up bellhop of esports, just fixing hotels and. It was ridiculous back in the day. I agree, Sam. I really hope we don't go back to that. But especially because, as this scenario shows, mate, players play so fast and loose with the truth and precedents and what's happened past. Because essentially, I mean, understandably, they're incentivized. They're just trying to get the best for them and the best situation for them, and they're trying to win and get the money. So they don't really care, I'm afraid, about, well, the right thing to do would be not to you. You know, they don't care about that jazz. By the way, as an aside, you know what you said there, though? Like, it is a really hard spot for Blast. I know what you mean, Semmler. I agree. It is. It's difficult. There's no perfect scenarios, but at the same time, boo fucking who. We took millions from all like shady people in the Middle East and the Danish government to make a video game tournament. And what happened then? You won't believe this. I have to make the decisions. I have to actually make the rules. And then enforce them. Oh God, like. Fucking suck it up, Buttercup. You're trying to actually rule the world of one game of esports. Like, is that too much for you? Well, I'll tell you what then. Just roll down your shorts in a video game Minecraft. Get out that little piggledy-wiggledy dick you've got. Yank it like you're trying to start an old lawnmower back in the day, trying to get some money to go to the baseball game. Yank that shit, and then after about 30 seconds, a little liquid comes out. That's all you can handle. Get the fuck out of esports. Get some competent people in. Here's why it doesn't actually make sense as an excuse, Semmler. Because you know what? You know this. People like ESL have tournament admins that have done that job for 10 years. They have people who've done like online cops to like Pro League to like IEM Sydney to majors to. They've done all scales of cups, and that's why, by the way, notice this very rarely happens with ESL, because ESL know their rule book, mate. They're Germans, like they know what's possible. They know how to make a ruling, even if it upsets a player. Like, I don't say they do it right every time, but mate, Blast just constantly had these problems between that shit like a few years back when they let the players fucking boycott a match for 3 hours because Christian heard, like someone heard the call. Like, Blast, you're right, Blast just roll over every time, mate. Like, I'm sorry, in this business, you've not only got to have a spine, but how are you going to beat ESL if you don't have a spine? Like you're saying, if you're just going to be the bitch to ESL than the bitch to the players, you're just going to end up with inferior products and inferior results. Like, I actually feel sad in this case, because I actually think Blast, if they did it, but here's the stupid thing, because I know they take care of the players and the talent, I actually think they have more leeway. You could have some balls and fucking make a decision. And even if they cry now, I tell you what, players behind the scenes actually will respect it. The legit ones will respect it. At least you made the choice. You know what I think people hate more than anything? It's inconsistency. As long as you're consistent with your decision, then I know I can live with it, you know.
Well, you can tell that they don't respect it right now, because if the players respected Blast as a tournament organizer, they would be handling it directly with Blast. The fact that the players go out onto Twitter immediately as this story breaks, as soon as this shit kicks off,
you got directly.
You got Twist,
Exactly.
you got everybody hopping on, and they,
Yes.
you know what's going on there. It's like, okay, good, it's giving us more context on what's happening, but also you have to take that context with a grain of salt, because who the fuck knows if what they're saying is true?
Which no one's doing, as you say.
Anything to get as much pressure as possible from the community.
Everyone's just taking it at face value.
Blast.
Sadly, no one gave it a grain of salt or something. Like what they did is their brain goes, "Do I like twists? If yes, then everything you say is true."
He is obviously correct.
Exactly.
And so, well, shout out to Twist, because he was actually interacting a little bit, because I asked him those questions. I'm like, because it was vague at first, where he's just like, it's been a while that we've known that we had conflict. Blah, blah. I'm like, what is a while? Is it a day, 5 days, a week, a month? Like, it's 3 weeks minimum on the roster lock. Did you know before the roster lock at least, right? And fair enough, he responded where he thought he was like 5 to 6 days or something. So it's like, okay, Twist gave us some context there, but it's still, I'm still in this sort of situation where it's just like, it is mad to me that players are going onto social media when something like this is kicking off, where they could potentially be out influencing the outcome of this of the whole situation by getting the community riled up and then pointing that community at Blast. And we know that the tournament organizers, they are not going to deal well with that kind of pressure. And so that's probably how you get this S-Attack situation, to like bring it back full circle. That's probably how you get this S-Attack situation where it's just like, FaZe are just going, okay, well then give us S-Attack. Blast are probably well aware of the conflict of interest, but they're like, fine. They need to make they need to make this go away. They're so like, oh, is S-Attack listed as a sub anywhere? No. Okay, fine. Play. You can use him. Obviously missing the whole point.
Exactly. Because that's the other reason. Here's why, by the way, if you're Blast, you don't do this. Because we haven't read any like fucked up intermissions. But we could. Like, I'll give you an obvious one I could do right now, Semmler. Maybe by this logic, maybe Blast doesn't like FaZe that much. So they were like, FaZe getting config, but he's actually really good. They might win. Nah, they can't have config. What about S-Attack? Wasn't he a bit shit? Yeah, you know what? Let him have S-Attack. That's what it makes it sound like. Like, who's this? Is it, what the fuck? Who runs this team?
I don't even know, dude, at this point. It's just mad to me that the teams are submitting. If this is true, right, where it's just like the teams are just submitting rosters without consulting the players that they're using as I keep wanting to say subscribers as substitutes. It's just like, so config Olafmeister, like, it still blows my mind that Olafmeister finds out while he's streaming. He's like, wait, what? I'm like, I'm a sub for the team. Wait, I'm going on a trip this weekend.
And also, logically, Semmler, this would have been the most appropriate phase of the Blast Premier circuit to use config in, because you don't get eliminated now. This is not the knockout stage.
I don't even.
Just keep going. It's all
right.
But
okay. So who's a pro? Who gives plenty of he's ahead of the game. He gives plenty of warning to the tournament organizers, so they can get their rosters sorted out and all that. Moses, dude, we have to congratulate Moses. He just had his kid with his wife.
Oh yes.
And that is and why
very
Moses
low key,
hasn't been casting. There hasn't been any.
Yeah.
He's been laying low since the beginning of the year. No announcements with him, going for Blast or Katowice or anything. It's because he's been very straight up with the TOs, where he's just like, yeah, I'm not casting. I'm going to be home. I'm with my wife. We're having our kid. There you go. Right. So it's almost like
wondering why he isn't on the Katowice list. It's nothing to do. He has no drama.
We'll talk about the Katowice roster.
Exactly.
But like. That is why Moses isn't around. It's because he was his wife was expecting a child, and he was home for when that happened. And fucking hey, congratulations, Jason.
What I don't understand is, why didn't Blast just invite S-Attack? Whatever, just keep going. Apparently that's all you just do, just put S-Attack in every start. The joke is,
everywhere.
Like, maybe Blast was the original agent of S-Attack back in the day. Like Henry, like, what about S-Attack? Like, I'm trying to make a great roster. S-Attack, anyone? It's like,
oh man.
Also, did you see that interview he did recently, S-Attack, about his time in Cloud9? Dude, he even admits that he only joined because of the salary.
Yeah, because of the money.
I took it and did it, and if you calculate it, he's getting like $39,000 a month. Like,
yeah.
By the way, it's no wonder. When he was in that team, everyone was giving him props. Like, he's even willing to be the ARPA. Dude, he's getting $39,000 a month. I bet at that point he was like the old VP guys. He was like, look, basically I'll do whatever it takes to get next month's salary. Just keep this gravy train running. Because I always used to say that back in the day. A famous joke I used to make, Semmler, was when we would talk about the classic VP lineup of Neo and Taz, when everyone used to know they make like the 25K a month or whatever from VP, right? We used to have discussions on this show where they were doing badly. And people were like, oh no, do you think Taz will retire? And I used to say, mate, he's not leaving Virtus Pro till they pry that 25K a month from his cold, dead Polish hands. Like, he's worked his whole life in esports to being like the best in the world for like 1,000 a month. He ain't leaving because this month wasn't great. Like I said, in that scenario, they're probably even just coming up with the wildest lies ever. Like, you know what? Let's give it one last go. Let's really get it together. You know what I mean? Like, because every month you'd get away with it, you get another 25K, don't you? Like, that's so egregious. 39K a month for Attack. Dude, that's why price tag is one of the all-time bangers.
I just hope he got a severance package. You know, when they let him go, it's like, oh, man, here's 6 months salary.
Spoiler, since they were in Cloud9, that's the part people don't even know. If I had to guess, I bet they took care of all those players on the way out and just paid them like a fucking golden handshake. Like you're saying, like there's 50K or 100K. Sorry, it didn't work out. See ya. So don't worry. That's why, if you haven't noticed, think about this carefully. Why haven't all the other players come out and just done tell-all interviews and flamed everyone in the org? Henry, none of them have, because that means they all got the fucking shut your fucking mouth.
Oh yeah.
And so and now only years later do we get the info.
And it's not like Cloud9 haven't got that kind of cash laying around.
Oh, that's not a problem for them, mate.
Hey,
in fact, that's one of the things about American esports orgs I despise, is they don't even try to run like proper businesses. Like, have you seen some of those cases? Mainly in other games, I'll say, to be fair, Semmler. But like, they'll do mad shit. Like, they do it every now and then. See it, you know, like the Astralis move, where you just like the Astralis one's different because we speculated why. But you know, when teams just like, they don't just say, we're benching this guy, you can buy him. They just go, we're just going to release him and end his contract. Like, so you're just giving away free money. Like, what? That guy's worth something. Like, remember when you had to pay a buyout? Make someone else pay a buyout. So I do, whenever that happens and you're a Team Liquid or a Cloud9, I'm sorry, that does just make it look like you have more money than you can spend. And it's like, you know what? Forget about it. Who cares about the 100K? Just kick it. Like, well, I tell you what, then when I'm negotiating, maybe I'll bear that in mind. Add another zero there, Jack. All right.
Thing is with Astralis, though, you know, that we know their share price. There's no getting around on that one.
Also, to be fair, one of the main reasons, aside from the fact he's a very insightful veteran figure, that I do enjoy talking to Jack Etienne from Cloud9 is because I try as often as possible to use his name, so I feel like Biden. I just go, you don't know Jack. Well, that's just the way it is, Jack. You know, I tried to just do my swag Biden. You know,
dude, I've got a few of the former vice president on my soundboard here, but yeah, can't pipe that into the show, dude. I mean, it gives us something to talk about. That's the thing. It feels like it's always going to be the same things happening over and over and over again, and
especially, by the way, with these standing scenarios, because as I said, right, it's not even like in this scenario, it's like there's nobody available. It's like you were also, let's be real, trying to finagle and end up with maybe an even better team. Like the joke is Config might have stood in and be like the bloody MVP of the tournament, and just win the whole thing. Like, so that's why there will always be people trying to get an edge in that sense, because the better play you get, the better your team does. So it's not as simple as we just need a warm body to fill a spot, is it? And by the way, shout out to Rain and Moses, both having kids.
Yeah, exactly. Congratulations to them, man. Fucking awesome. Super happy to hear it. And yeah, no, it's gonna be really cool. But that is you know, like that's the. I mean, wait, hold on. Before we move into the Katowice and like the other kind of news that's going on right now, because there's some other stuff about FaZe, there's some other stuff about Katowice that I wanted to talk about. But real quick about the results that are going on right now in the we might as well just tie a bow on Blast, because we finished the group phase and now it's going into the play-in stage. So that's all kind of come down. So let's actually just talk some Counter-Strike real quick, and we can hop into that. But like Group A right now, I checked the odds before that kicked off. Where it was like 8-1 on EG beating Heroic, and I'm still kicking myself. I'm still kicking myself because I'm just like, that could have been a nice payday. Because definitely called the EG beating Heroic. Absolutely 100% possible. First game of the year. EG are going to be all fired up. They're going to have done their homework. Heroic, no stand-in, so there's no changes. There's no weird stuff going on there. You can try and pick up on some old tendencies, and you can actually anti-strat them. Like, EG, they actually managed to beat Heroic in the opener. What the fuck? Absolute mad lads. But as far as the breakdown is concerned, the results are concerned. Astralis, you know, I didn't know what to expect from them coming into this, and I feel like Astralis themselves in post-match interviews and all that, pre and post-match, whatever we heard from the players, it felt like they were hedging as well. It never felt like they were coming into this with like a guns blazing, we're going to take over the world kind of attitude. It always felt coming into this tournament that they were just we're just gonna see how it goes, no pressure, you know, we're just gonna, you know, like let it hang out there and like we'll see where it goes, and if we win, we win. If we don't, it's all good. We're still figuring it out, right? You know, Buzz has got to get his chance. Did you have any expectations with Astralis coming into this one? Because holy shit, did it go poorly for Buzz? Poor bastard.
No,
like,
because
he definitely
the problem
did not have that strong start.
If you look at their group, best case scenario, they're supposed to finish third in this group ahead of EG. And by the way, there's a world where even they would be vulnerable to lose to EG if they've ever played them at Astralis, of course. So unfortunately, when I saw this group, and then there's the fact that this Boz guy is completely fresh, yeah, I have no expectations. I actually start with very tempered expectations, and mine are more like maybe it kind of 8 so they can be okay and then gradually build up. Like I'm actually not as bothered about like Astralis the team. I'm more bothered about just individually Device. Like if Device gets good again, then I'll get interested. If he doesn't get really amazing, then it's not going to matter, is it? Because here's the problem with the Boz one is like you can't throw someone in the deep end like that, mate. It's so rare that you're going to get a Monacy that can do it. Like
exactly
it's
right.
so rare. Like you can even, and let's be real. Think about the interviews you see with Monacy, who by the way has his own context outside of the game that could easily be pressuring him and fucking winners. But he doesn't seem like any of it bothers him. That's a really unusual young man. Like the others, you might not even know this, guys, but the amount of pros that seem cocky on camera and they're riddled with insecurities, or they're like, or some of them, for example, their whole identity is like, I'm the top fragger, and when they're not playing well, they're fucking all over the place, and they think, oh, they're worried, and then there's all the dynamics in the team. Am I getting kicked? Are they going to get that guy in? Like, so actually, like, I think to me, the other thing I hate about all these pickups they've done, Semmler, where it was like Lockie, and then this guy, it's like, why not take someone who's at the level just below? Like, at least the Farley signing was someone who deserved a shot. You know what I mean? Like, the Boss guy's just going to get hung out to dry, isn't he? Like, obviously, he's not going to be good. It's his first tournament ever, and he's playing against who? Right, fucking, let's go look at who was in their group. So you play your opening games against Ziwu, the like fucking second best player of the last half a decade, who is owning everyone's ass, and the rest of Vitality. And then if you'd have won that game, you'd play Heroic, who just fucking win the final of the major. The final of the major. How's that fair? He should look bad against those teams. The problem I have with these players when they play at that level is it takes so many matches before I even feel like I see the real play. You know, like at the beginning, they're just like, they have the deep end. They're just fucking paddling to stay alive. Yeah. You know, they don't get to properly play their game.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way to put it, because this is where I'm glad that you pointed that out, because it feels like we got a bit spoiled with the rookies. You know, because like Wonderful, Bit, Monacy,
even go back to Ziwu.
Like,
yeah, there's been too many. It's been too many.
Like, what the fuck? Like, this is amazing. It's like now we're getting that return back to norm where it's been like really high lately, but now it's going to be like, okay, no. When you're actually getting chucked into the deep end, you do not, take off with the breaststroke. You fucking sink. You really try to stay alive.
He is literally at the moment the worst ranked player in the tournament.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is. It's 0.66 rating. It's rough. It's rough. What do we? I mean, you don't have to look far to find Zip though, or Glaive for that matter. Like that's
been the story of Astralis last year, hasn't it?
Because
that's the part. You know what? This is an angle people might always miss, right? I used to say last year, in fact, it was even when we were doing the show, Semmler, when the rumor was that, like, before we knew any of the drama about Config, when he was just a proper member of the team, you remember the rumor, obviously, the whole year still was Device joins the team. And when you used to say back then, right, but if Device joins, you remember I always used to tell you, I don't even think Device joining with Glaive and Zipnix and Devlame will necessarily make them like top of the world again. They don't even have the Config angle now. So I actually think people, because the real problem, I know what's tricking people is this, because it got me for the first year, is when you look on paper, roster's complete. I've got Glaive, I've got Zip. Those players haven't been very good for a while now, guys. Like, we made this point on another show on this channel, actually. If you go to the YouTube channel, and this is a video, hot take point made, which is a new show I do with Casada Maui Snake. I had a hot take on there on the last episode, Semmler, but it's right. If you look at the results and the way the year went in 2022, are you ready for a fucking line and a half, Semmler? Glaive was the 5th best Danish IGL.
Okay.
Right, you ready? Carrigan.
Yeah.
Snappy. Cadian.
Okay.
Huxley. How am I not put Huxley? What a fucking tournament, dude. Glaive, by performance, Glaive was the 5th best Danish IGL. So the problem is, when you see on paper, like a lot of people, the Zipnix one's faded now. Dude, the Glaive one, that needs to be a big turnaround if he wants to be a top IGL again. Like, he's got to show me something. Like, it's been too long. So my problem at the moment is, what have they got in the team? They've got Device, who's just coming back. Zipnix still seems a bit checked out. Glaive's no one knows where he's at. Individually, he's bad. Team-wise, they haven't been good for a while. They've just added the 100 now. So, mate, Astralis is a mess right now. They're a fucking mess. I'll give him the 100 angle, or maybe 100 can do something.
The thing is like Glaive doesn't have MVP level Device anymore to
That's true.
just boost the team. You know, Hooksy, you can look at Hooksy and be like, well, individually, he's 0.01 rating off of Glaive. The difference is that Hooksy has got Nico and Monacy, who are beating the like Nico looks unbeatable right now.
I'll give you that one, but here's the problem. It's going to get really dodgy when I say the name Snappy.
Sure, yeah.
Snappy is playing for tiny bedroom org ents, who I will reiterate what Lurpis, one of the founders of the team, said on the Four Horsemen, also not on this channel, but on the other channel, the industry one. He said that is a team that's never taken venture capital, right? Yep. So they're a team. I can tell you right now, I know their salaries are like half or a third of what someone in Astralis makes. And then think about it, right? Dude, even his best talent of the year was Spinks, you remember? And as soon as he went to Vitality, the level dropped. So I think that's a miracle job. So the point is, if you just look at all these people, it's not even that like it's like a super diss against Glaber. It's like, bro, give us something. You know what I mean? Because that's the problem. To bring it back, the real problem with Astralis is on paper it looks like, oh, you're that close, but it's like every player has a question mark next to him. If you know what I mean. Everyone. Like, look, I do think Device will get there, so that one I'm not as worried about. The problem is the Buzz one, who the fuck knows what? Like, how many months is it going to take to get good? And then will they even give him this long? Will they replace him? Are they looking for someone else? Then you got the Glaive and Zipnix one, as you say. They're still bottom players. These are still players that struggle, unfortunately.
Well, it just says everything. It's like coming back to that point about how the North American orgs have so much money, they don't know what to do with it. They can make plays, whatever play they want, really. At the end of the day, they have the money to make it. This is where you think that Astralis, it's clear that they're struggling for cash.
Like they don't have much, yeah.
Because how in the flying fuck do you let config go? Just think, if you have the core of BlameF, config, and Device, who the fuck cares what Zipnix and Glaive are doing? You're good. Like, those guys are going to batter everybody.
This is why I know people like Richard actually had sort of a different take to me on the config scenario with that fight. Because I know to them, they were sort of like, how could you ever keep him in the org after this? And I was like, it's Astralis, dude. It's the most scumbag org ever. You'd think if there was ever an org that would go, well, I'm not just going to give you config. I'm going to keep him. You'd think it'd be Astralis, for fuck's sake. Like, the joke, I agree with you. I even thought the same thing at the time. I said in my video when config left Astralis, I doubt Astralis will ever get a player that plays his role who was as good as config. They've blown it. Like, they haven't in a sense. Like, if we're all being super professional, he should not be allowed to play. Like, by the way, that is a fireable offense. I think that's a totally reasonable discipline. It's just remember the industry you're in. You're in an industry where people will step over you to get to the other guy to win. So unfortunately, it's just like, this is the same paradox. Not paradox. This is the same dilemma that everyone had about the coaches cheating, Semmler. Right? If my coach cheats, but my coach is really good, well, why do I have to fire him? Because then when he gets unbanned, you're going to hire him. So instead, fuck firing them, and I'll just make him my assistant for a year until his ban ends, and I get to keep him. That's like what people could have done with config. It wouldn't have surprised me, but they didn't, because that's the thing. They do look a bit silly now. Think about it. Everyone else in the world's like, can I have config? Can I just have a go with config? Can I just maybe play one tournament with config? And then Astralis is just over there like, got buzz though. Got buzz. By the way, I'll tell you my joke.
They're over there like,
I'll tell you my joke from Twitter, because it is a good joke. It needs to be put on record. Question: why did Astralis sign Buzz? Answer: because it's looking like 2023 is going to be a light year. Whatever. Listen, it's not my best work. It's whatever. It was all right. It was all right. It was something. It was better than Prince. It was a better performance than Buzz in the game, relative.
Yeah, man. I feel for him, man. I feel like
I feel bad for all those people.
And also, I mean, it's still not proven if whether or not Device is going to be able to do anything on this team or not. We don't know if he's back or not. You know, it's one thing to play FPL with your mates. It's another thing to play an official and actually play on.
He did overtly say, you remember, we discussed it. When he joined the team, he basically said he didn't know, like, that he solved his problems. He's still going through them. So I just don't want to put too much pressure on him in that regard, you know.
No. And fine, fair enough. But I like that is the difference. And that's what's always so difficult about these mental breaks that happen, where it's just like, okay, you take a pause for your mental side. It's like, do you come back from that? It can be so difficult. It's not like, okay, I broke a bone. Good. I'll be back in 6 weeks, or, you know, like a tendon. Wait, I'll do some rehab. I'll be back in 2 months. It's like mental side of things. Like who knows? It's an unknown in that sort of sense. And so, of course, it's not like I'm over here rooting that Device doesn't come back. Of course, I want to see him do as best as possible, and I want to see him return to greatness. But it is that question mark that Astralis are always going to have hanging over their heads, at least until he does start to show up. And so far, at least in this tournament, he hasn't shown up. So a 1.03 rating after 5 maps, that's where it stands. I mean, of course, he could redeem himself here because they're going to play against NIP next. They're still alive in the play-in stage thanks to the blast format, where you're still not knocked out of the tournament. You have yet another chance to make it through. So they could redeem themselves here against NIP. NIP are going to be, what I'm guessing, playing with Config. Could you imagine? It's just because NIP are just like, wait, Config isn't playing with FaZe. He's in Copenhagen. He's in Blast right now. Get him.
By the way, here's the joke. Are you ready for the ultimate hilarity? Because think logically, guys. Since Nip plays against Astralis in the opener of the play-in stage, and remember, if you lose that match, you don't make the Blast Spring Finals, right? That means that if Astralis just hadn't cut Config, he might still be under contract. They could have said, you can't use him. He said, like Nip did with Esatag. Yeah. I mean, the other one, right? Essentially, if they'd just not released his contract, Semmler, they might not even be able to use him against you. You're going to now get eliminated from the main tournament you play in every year. Aside from the major, remember, if you're Astralis, you want to be at all the Blast events. You've actually fucked yourself on that one. I mean, you didn't know it could happen. It's obviously so many different things have happened. And at the end, it's just being unlucky. Because spoiler, Astralis is going to lose that game. Why wouldn't they? Like, if you actually look at that bracket, by the way, like, NIP and OG are both way better than Astralis. Like, why would Astralis be getting out of there? Probably not.
Or Maxter, though. He actually, you know, from Nip's side of things, he actually looked pretty good. Like, he had some clutches. He showed some poise. He showed some. I mean, he did a whole lot better than Buzz.
The age of Swedish players is over. Has ended. There you go. It's just true.
Dude,
is it not
I
true?
was actually getting kind of hype where I was like, okay, you know, he's doing all right. This is interesting. Like, he's not totally flailing about like Buzz did or like some of the others. You know, it's like he's actually holding his own and having some clutches and showing some poise and doing some good stuff. So, you know, poor bastard. I wonder if he even knew that this was happening. What, he just flew down to Copenhagen for a day and they're like, right, okay, that's done. Bye. Go back home to Stockholm.
The only Swedish Max I give a fuck about is that straight fire burger fucking
There you
chain.
go.
There you
go.
Which is actually pretty good for you.
Yeah, as far as fast food goes, it's
way better than McDonald's.
Better than all the others. Better than all the others in Sweden. Get a Max burger if you're ever in Sweden. It's good stuff. All right, Group B.
That was when I knew, by the way, that like, because I sort of did low-key know that major in Stockholm, probably the last major. Even though, I'll just give people a quick anecdote, even though at the venue, we were literally in a venue that was connected to our hotel, so they had catering. They could go and get you some, like, by the way, proper cooked food as well, not shit, like proper hotel food, like, you know, like I don't know, like roast chicken and vegetables. But because it was the last major I was ever doing, by the last few days, I was just being a cunt and telling the guy, like, can you just get me a burger, though? And he'd be like, oh, sure, what you want? Like, there's a McDonald's down the road. Like, I'd rather have a Max, though. It's like, I was just sort of seeing how far I could push it, because from the old E-League days, like, you got to see with those runners, I always test the limits, like, because here's the problem. I always do feel sorry, because they don't know Semmler. It's like Blast. If you break and set a bad precedent once, you're done forever, because I'll take that to the limit. Like, if you one time let me get that Max burger, and if you make the mistake of actually also getting me, like, the milkshake as well, you're just done. I'm getting it every day I want it at that point in time. Like, that's just the way it's going to be.
Dude, I mean, doesn't it, like, time fucking flies? It's been a year already, man, since those.
Oh man, I saw something the other day that fucking was wild. Like, let me think what it was. Let me just double check. Maybe I was looking at Wikipedia. I saw something where it was something from like 2015. Oh, that's it. It's that. There we go. Today is the anniversary of the iBuyPower players being banned in 2015. Now, the reason why I've realized, Semmler, I know why that feels like it's so close, but it's actually so far away. Like, obviously, it's like 8 years away now, right? Here's why that feels so close, Semmler. Because you were an adult already when it happened. In fact, you were mostly who you are now. So it feels like it was 5 minutes ago. Whereas here's the difference. I've been in esports for 21 years. The stuff at the beginning of the 21 years feels like I was a child. I wasn't. I was like 18 onwards. But it feels like I was a different person. Like that was a different lifetime ago. Everything from the last like 10 years just feels like it was me, but it was yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Because I was saying this on the League of Legends the other day, by the way. On my show, Summoning Insight with Monty, I do in League of Legends. I said to him, to clarify how amazing the longevity of people, I don't know if you know this, Semmler, but the guy who just won Worlds as the ADC Deft for DRX, and he was playing as Faker, those two players were top players in like 2013, bro. Like, I said to him, do you understand the best player in CSGO in 2013 was Get Right? And he's been retired for years. Like, imagine if he was in the major final now, that's what it's like. Like, but I don't think people realize, like, esports feels like it was like 3 years, didn't it? It was ages.
I think we have that generation now coming up, just to piggyback on this point that you were making, because Tommy tweeted at me, because I did a tweet earlier where I was like, holy shit, Nico looks unstoppable. he just looks like a total monster.
Okay.
And Tommy just tweeted at me saying, he's been consistently one of the top players in the world for 8 years now.
Oh, yes.
And you're just sitting here thinking, fuck yeah, man, it's already, yeah. I mean, it's just right that he's
maybe
been
7,
going.
yeah, 6 or 7. It's up there, yeah.
He has been going, like, that's the thing, like 2013 iNation. March 2013.
That was when he was playing with like Yanko and that, but yeah.
Sure. Okay, so then he joins Mao's 2015.
Yep.
So April 2015. So
and if people don't remember, for real, right out the gate, he was already really promising. And by the way, it's something like
Amazing.
6 months into being a mouse. If people remember, I had him as the best player in the world. I used to think he was better than Cold Zera, for real. Because the eye test was better. Like, let's be real. Look, I'll give it to Cold Zera. I did, if you ever go back and look at my end of years. I always gave it to Cold Zera for 2016, 2017, because he had the total package. But mate, Nico's eye test was unreal back then. It was unreal.
And then you get guys like Simple who have also been going hard for years. I mean, it's just like now this new generation is going to have that longevity. It feels like, or at least it's like.
Sure.
Unfortunately, forget right. It's Forrest. Those guys. They were so good for so many years in 1.6 as well as CS:GO. It's like you can only go for so long, I guess, right? You're not.
No, people don't realize if you actually look at like how long a normal career lasts in a game like Counter-Strike. People like Forrest, especially, he'd had an entire career in 1.6. Get right, had a good few years. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually mad that those guys were good in another game as well. That just shows how talented they are. They were good at 2 games.
Forrest in particular, he's just one of those guys he can play any game. It's amazing.
Unless it's FaZe trying to play a blast.
Well, dude, I was just hoping for Forrest as the stand-in, man. I was like, this is the chance. No contract to hold him back. Just he's in Stockholm. Just get him down there. Would have been sick, but wasn't meant to be. That's a tag. Had to have him.
I can't believe I've done this. Oh, I've ruined it.
What'd you do?
Ruined it. I've been trying to make a joke for years. I've told you it already, but I never got the context right, so it was always like skewed. The joke, I always make that joke about Nicola Nihon bringing back the concept of Danegeld, which was the money that the British used to pay the Danes and the Vikings to fuck off and stop coming back. The joke is, it never worked because it was never
coming back and fucking them up.
Well, they did, but here's, yeah, of course, because spoiler, that's how it works in hostage situations. They just decide I can just come back anytime I want. Like, I don't have to let you go, dickhead. So the mad thing is, though, the reason that never worked as a joke, though, because it's a funny joke about Nicola Nihon, but in what way are we paying him? I should have used the joke that it's Config who brought that back. Because Config essentially got paid Danegeld to just get the fuck out of Australis. They were like, you know what, here's a sack of money, get the fuck out, don't ever come back. And he was like, well, I will come back in about 4 months and knock you out of Blast Premier Spring. But they didn't know that, so.
There you go.
They didn't know.
Dude, think about it. He is going to be, it's amazing this storyline that he's going to be playing in the lower bracket elimination match now for NIP. What even is this NIP? I mean, I guess fair enough. You already had one stand-in, so how bad is it going to be? But
I think the firepower is lots of this roster. I think they could do something.
I think so too. Now at this point, yeah. No, you add Config into the mix. Rez is looking good. He's had a strong start to the year. It looks like he's coming right back into rifling, and he's actually looking really good. He had some pretty solid rounds. Like that's that bodes well. Now you got Head Trick. What do you think of Head Trick? I mean, we're talking about group. We're talking about Group B. I mean, that's Group C. But like, what do you think? What do you think of Head Trick? Like, he's also one of those guys like the rookie sort of scenario where, sink or swim sort of scenario. He hasn't exactly sunk, but he hasn't exactly taken off either.
The problem is this: we've had so many of those CIS region AWPers come out where they're just so good out the gate that, like, I think we have unrealistic expectations. Yeah. Like, to me, I want to see where he is. Like, obviously, Katowice is really soon, so that might even be unfair. I'd say in about 2 months, I'll have a sense, like, is he actually going to make it or not? Because I'm with you. He just sort of showed flashes now. Like, because remember, they have signed him Monacy star where he is supposed to be the star. Like, this is supposed to become like one of the best players in the world. So he definitely wasn't bad. I'm with you on that one, but it also wasn't like some like flying colors, crazy out the gate. It was kind of just a bit all right. It was all right.
Where did he land in terms of rating? Yeah, 1.02. So like, yeah,
I'm gonna guess that's in the middle or something, right?
He's pretty much smack in the middle.
Yeah,
which, I mean, fair enough. We were having this discussion.
I mean, bearing in mind they lost games, that makes sense. Remember, they did finish in third in their group, so it's not bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I mean, it's better than Big, who have seriously.
And he is, remember, guys, he is a Ukrainian player playing with a Finnish IGL. And then, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's his normal. Remember, there's the other thing that we're being unfair about. True, Monacy one was international team too. But when you look at people like Wonderful or Patsy, they're playing in their own region still. Like, they are playing with all the people, that speak their language, all comfy. This guy's going into a scenario where, I'll tell you right now, the fucking culture clash between Swedish and fucking Ukraine. It's going to be enormous. Like, that's going to be a very different set of how you communicate, how you talk to each other, what the hierarchy's like, whether you can be harsh, whether you're supposed to be polite. Like, he's got a lot he's going to have to figure out.
Yeah, culture, no doubt about it. It's definitely going to be the thing is, though, now it's like, I wonder where the cutoff is going to be for the
like, how long does he get?
Pardon me?
As in, like, how long does someone like this get to prove that they're good?
No, in terms of the communication, right? Like, do we consider the communication a thing anymore? Because Monacy, Headtrick, like, these are guys who are going to be coming up playing pugs, international pugs. Maybe they're pugging with Russians a bunch, but they're probably also pugging internationally a bunch as well. And so from a young age, they're going to be learning how to speak English. You know, they should be able to communicate. And it seems like Monacy was able to slot into G2 easy as pie. So Headtrick, I mean, they're 16, 17 years old. It feels like we may be approaching that point now where the ecosystem, the way that the ecosystem functions just means that you're going to be playing in English from a very young age now. And remember, it's like when you're young, you're a sponge. You can learn a language so much faster than if you're older. So it's just like, I really think like now it may very well be the case where we are going to see that acceleration towards international rosters because the younger talent, not the 23-year-olds, the 25-year-olds or whatever, but the 16, 17, 18-year-olds, those guys will have played in English for so long now, just in pugs, that they'll be able to play. There won't be that big gap the way that Nico had to get over that, right? Where Nico had to go from, you know, just calming in Serbian to calming in English. And now it's like that.
Oh, by the way, I've just realized now.
Get over.
Everything I was saying was nonsense about the Nip Astralis match because that's in Blast. It's for Katowice that I think he starts in config.
No, he's listed as a sub right now in Blast.
They allowed him to actually be listed for that.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the roster right now, dude. Headtrick and config subs. Headtrick is a sub apparently. He's listed as a sub for whatever reason. That's and weird. Config is on this. I'm looking at the Blast the Wikipedia right now.
Oh, so then. Okay.
I mean, he's there. Like, right? He's there. He's got a spot at the hotel. He's just chilling. So you could sign this. It's also crazy because he's signed with Yordi. He's signed with one of the founders of Astralis, his agency that's representing other players like Nikodos and Dupree and a few others. And he just announced today, Config, that he's signing, that he's brought those guys on as agents. So I'm wondering just like how fast everything has moved on this whole thing where he signs with those guys as agents. Those guys are negotiating. Like maybe Nip reach out to him at some point or just like, hey, you know, like, are you open for discussion? And then, you know, I really wonder like the chain of events, how this happens that he's brought into sub. That doesn't work out. He's probably contacted by the agent to get represented. Go for it.
On the HLTV article, it says he can't play at Blast.
Oh,
it says Config now joins NIP at a time when their Blast campaign is still underway, though he won't be able to play in Copenhagen.
Why is that?
It says, I mean, I assume for the same thing, the roster angle, right? You can't just change your roster like in the middle of the fucking tournament.
Oh, I suppose so.
Because they didn't have the roster lock, did they? So I assume it's that. So it stays here that his debut will be IEM Katowice. Anyway, sorry if I cut off the end of what you're saying.
No, not at all.
Just thought I'd put it out there. So basically, unfortunately, the thing I said about how it'd be like Config knocking and stuff, that apparently won't happen. By the way, they'll probably still lose. Like, I'm sure Nip will win the game, but it doesn't look like it'll be Config doing it.
It's so weird how fast they've moved on this.
Sure.
Bringing Config in. It's like, was this all part of the plan to begin with? What's going on? Or like, is this a long-term thing with Hampus where they saw the writing on the wall and so they were already working towards finding a replacement for him? Or was it really just a spur of the moment kind of thing? I mean, because like I'm looking at the asshole Jonas Gunderson or whatever. Plan the year, say it out loud, and watch it change after 2 games. That's esports for you. I'm proud of everyone in and around the team for putting personal well-being before everything else, allowing us to act instantly to support Hampus. There's a silver lining, though. We just started the season and are still getting Headtrick introduced, and Config is a great player who fits the team well. We will take one match at a time, work hard, and dream big. I'm a believer. But I mean,
listen, I know this is obviously unlucky. It's not their fault. But if you look, Sarah, on the 19th of January, remember, it's only the 26th now. So a week ago, on the 19th of January, there's a headline on an HLTV.org, an interview with Alexi B. Hopefully, we aren't going to have any changes for a while.
Yeah, no, like they can't catch a fucking break this team. They can't catch a break this team. It's tragic. For one thing, like something is discordant here. It's like, I'm proud of everyone in and around the team for putting personal well-being before everything else. Is that the right message you want to be sending these days?
I think that's ridiculous, mate. Like,
You know,
look,
like-
I understand it in the optics of the current day, and I can tell you because this actually happened in League of Legends about 5-6 months ago. A player got burned out, and the same thing happened. You weren't allowed to question it, Semmler. You weren't allowed to ask, like, well, you know, like, for example, one thing I genuinely brought up when I was talking with Monty about this topic was, what are we selecting for? Because me and Monty have this approach that we do in esports that other people don't seem to do. When we designed the format for Flashpoint, we didn't sit down and go, I've heard this format's good. We asked, since the format's essentially like a test, what are we testing for? What are we trying to find? And so that's why we designed the format of Flashpoint to be like super, like, to allow the best team to make it through. So the question I would have in this scenario basically is, oh, fuck, I've lost my point there. Where was I going?
It's personal well-being. It's the
yes, that was it.
What are we testing
basically,
for?
This is what I would ask is this. If the implication, like he just said there, Semmler, is it's just about like everyone has to have like personal well-being, mental health. Wait a minute, what are we doing? Like, this is esports.
What are we doing
like,
exactly?
You know what I mean? This isn't like he's working at like a post office and, you know, oh, I was feeling like a nut. No, you are doing a job that by definition is like stressful. You're sometimes under enormous pressure personally, professionally. You're letting teammates down. You know, if you lose this game, you don't make a mid. Like, dude, isn't in some fucked up sense actually having to deal with and process difficult emotions and stress and anxiety literally a part of being a top competitor? And then let's throw in a game where you get paid like what's a normal person in the West's yearly salary in 1 month. You get paid that in 1 month. Spoiler, we have a term in other jobs. You might know this. If you work on an oil rig, for example, one of the reasons they pay you way more is you might die. It's called danger money. Like, that job commands a higher salary because you know the risks of it are way higher than working in a corner shop. So even though there are obviously going to be circumstances like maybe this device one where I've heard he was having like panic attacks and he obviously already has that like established stress-based like intestinal problem. I get there are going to be examples, but there are also, my worry is this, Semmler. My concern is that in the future, any pro who thinks, and look, I'm not saying a specific name, I'm saying this is a potential abstract possible problem we could fall into. This is what I don't want to happen, Semmler. What if in the future some pro notices like, oh, I'm in a slump, I'm going downhill. Wait a minute. Why keep playing in the slump and shit my whole career up? Let's get a little 3 months off. And what I'll do is I'll just go and I'll say, it's like, but the reason, by the way, before anyone says, how dare you accuse a player, people do this in uni all the time. Do you know how many people have gone into uni and tried to like start the year again and go, look, I was having a lot of like emotional problems and I didn't like integrate to the halls. So can I start like the year again? Or can I get like everyone does it. Like, it's what people do when they're in a tough spot. So I just don't want that to be like a precedent. Like, this should only be used in the most extreme scenarios, you know? And this is one team, this team, because think about this, Semmler, this one org has now had this happen twice to them in a 2-year span.
Yes. It's clear that this has got to be some part of the culture there.
Yeah, what's going on?
Putting personal well-being before everything else. So what, you put yourself before your teammates in all respects? You put yourself before the org in all respects? Like, there's none of that. Like, I don't know. It just rings weird to me. Maybe because when, like, dude, I played hockey when I was a kid. When I was growing up, I played hockey. Obviously, it's not the same thing in the sense that, you know, it wasn't a paid professional thing. But like the mindset back then, it was just like, oh fuck, I got checked into the boards. I'm hurting everywhere, but I better get the fuck up and like keep going because my team, like, you know, it's like I don't want to let my teammates down or any of that sort of thing. Like, the mindset was you keep going no matter what.
It's the opposite. Yes,
it's the complete opposite.
You remember the saying,
like, oh, I'm feeling a little out of it today, guys. So maybe I'm not going to show up and play in the match or something. I don't know. It's like, what kind of message are we sending here?
There's a saying they have in American sports that I think is a banger. You know what they say? If you're in like some legendary franchise, they say you play for the logo, not on the name on the back. You don't play for yourself. You play for the fucking team.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the vibe, right?
And this whole like personal well-being before everything else. I really despise this. I think it's probably something. It's something.
And by the way, spoiler, there's a reason. Just think about this for a second. There's a reason these scenarios have only happened, Semmler, to Astralis from Denmark and Nip from Sweden. Spoiler, that's because the culture allows this. Like, you're never going to see ever a fucking Russian team have this happen, or like Ukrainian team. Oh no, he has to go out for that's never going to happen. Like, in their world, it's like, do you want to die in a fucking ditch with no money, or do you want to be on our team? Like, they're going to fucking keep playing, aren't they? So the reason I find it so disturbing is because the reason you can't fully question it is it's what's going on in someone's mind. Like, I can't know what's going on inside them. I have to trust that they're telling the truth, but I also have to be wary that, like, if this starts happening too many times, I'm going to get skeptical. Because if people don't know, remember the original one in Astralis. The problem with that one, Semmler, was I know those players were burned out, but I also know they were really sick of what was going on with their org, and they weren't like in the negotiation process. There were also other factors that maybe tipped them that way. So certainly something to keep your eye on. Because if this happens again, what's even the point of being a Nip fan if it happens a third time now? Like, come on, guy, have a real lineup and just play Counter-Strike, please. Please. You know?
Well,
Unless you're just the unluckiest dog of all time. Could be that.
They are in that sense. They certainly are. It's they've tried to make plays and it just hasn't panned out for them time and time again. But perhaps this time will be where it all comes together. And for Katowice, I mean, yeah, that's a big event that you're going to want to fucking knock it out of the park for. It's just let's see, because Group B, FaZe with a stand-in. They managed to make it through. OG, I think, choked it in the end. I think they could have won Mirage, and then it would have been anybody's game in the grand final. But OG, they dropped the ball on Mirage, and then FaZe are just too poised. They're too good. And Esatag is a veteran in the sense that you should be able to just, Kerrigan has shown that he has a talent for taking players and just fitting them into the system. Like he's done it time and time again with this FaZe roster.
I also think, by the way, as an aside, I actually also think that's a pretty good, like not pure 1-for-1, but like that's a pretty good role swap, like Rain for Esatag. I expected Esatag should be able to do his job. The problem is it's not as sexy as having config, but wouldn't be a good role swap anyway, would it? So It's a bit up in the air, isn't it?
What do we make of Liquid?
The reason the config one is a big deal, though, is this, Semmler. It's not even just about the Blast tournament. The reason I think the deal, which essentially, as far as we know, it seems to be someone like Heroics complained, and that's why he hasn't been able to play for fucking FaZe. The reason that's big for me, though, is because remember that story that everyone's been talking about of, like, not just like Rain was having a kid, but at some point in time, both Rain and especially Kerrigan are getting really old. Like, at some point in time, people are going to start to retire. So if you're going to, like, let's say Rain plays one more year. If you just stood in now and it went great, if you're config, maybe you get into FaZe and you can just be the new player. You can't do that now. You have to go a different route. So that was the only thing that annoyed me about that one. Is like, not only did I always want to see config play with Kerrigan, but like it just feels like they didn't handle that situation well. Like that still doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't feel like it was the right decision,
Ultimately, it's going to come back to haunt them. Because now, I mean, if you've let config slip through your fingers to go over to NIP, I mean, that's going to be, but then again, at the same time, it's like we were talking about at the end of last year going into this year, where it's just like, are you going to make any changes if you're FaZe? Odds are no. It's like you're still a dangerous team, even with Rain on the roster. So would you do that swap now, or would you try to still, go the distance with Rain and try and, defend your title, or at least get a second major with this roster?
No,
right?
I'm with you. I would do the latter. What I would do is this. I would do the latter, but if I'm just never winning tournaments, then I would, like, essentially what I would probably do,
that play.
Like you're saying, I'd probably just set the next major as the next mark and be like, look, if we don't win anything and we don't win that major, then I'll make this shift. But otherwise, I'll give you, I mean, it's been such a great roster. And as you said, like, the joke is the fact that even with the standing, they've done this twice now, guys, they still win over top teams. Like, it's just a great team. Like, there's something in the core of that team that is really special.
Right, what did we have? Oh yeah, right. So we had the roster thing for Katowice. That was going to be for, okay, that's fair enough. That's config. He's going to be playing for NIP and Katowice. Apart from that, I mean, just quickly bouncing through. I mean, Liquid is just Liquid.
Underwhelming, mate, aren't they?
Observation from Liquid is whatever you've got to do. Like, I don't know if it's because Yakinder is calling on more rounds now, and so he's got more shit going on in his head, and so he just can't click heads. But to see Yakinder drop off a cliff in terms of performance, because he was a key part of Liquid.
People don't know,
dangerous.
Yakinder was ranked one spot below the head trick guy we just said was like average.
Yes. No, he is very firmly in the middle, but that's not the case with Yakinder. I mean, even in opening kills, I mean, dude, like end of last year, Yakinder was an absolute freak beast when it came to opening kills, just taking over. I mean, him and Nico were at the top of the pack, and now he's like nowhere to be seen on that front. He's nowhere to be seen on an individual level. So you just don't have the kind of firepower to be fucking around with this. If you're Liquid, you need to have Yakinder up there. Naf, fortunately, is able to carry a little bit of water, it looks like. But if Elige is kind of quiet right now, because Elige isn't showing that star level, Yakinder needs to be up there, because you're not going to fall back on OC. He's not going to be the one who's going to make the difference for you. He is a tradesman op. He is not a star op. So whatever you got to do, if you're Nitro, to get Yakinder happy and focused and performing, you got to do it, because otherwise you've got nothing. Like this team will not go anywhere if with only Naf, doing with only a rifle in Naf's hands doing the work. It's not even like you have a star op to carry the weight. A rifle is just, unless you're Nico, it's just not consistent enough.
No, that's the problem is, like to have a rifle be your number one player, the joke is, one, he has to be absolutely like a god. And then two, you probably still want a really good AWP as the second best player. You know what I mean? Like you can't really get around it in this world, can you? Because that's the problem they have in that team is, like, not only is Elige up and down, Yakinder, just because of his role, is going to have some, he's going to feast or famine. He's going to have some games that's not going to work out. And then that's why once you like check every box, it is also who ends up looking bad in the end, because you look at his stats and you're like, brother, you're an AWPer. Like, as we just said,
exactly.
like, the joke is, Head Trick joins Nip and players like you play now, and we're like, nah, hopefully he picks it up. That's just how you're playing, like, a year into the team. Like, it's got to get better, because in my opinion, like, at some point, you don't just keep the same lineup forever. Surely, eventually, they're going to consider, like, replacing him. Like, someone's going to get replaced, surely.
Someone's going to get replaced. That's the thing. It's like someone's going to go. And where do you get an op? If you're going to get rid of OC, where are you going to get an op that's going to be competitive? Yeah, no, it's...
Well, they say that. They've just let, like, about fucking 10 CIS AWPers be signed since they signed over. Like, the joke is, I keep telling them all the names, like, Dexter, Elian, fucking, like, wonderful. We all know them. You can all see them in the game. They just won't sign them for some reason. And they just worship Yekindar. They thought he was going to fix everything, didn't they?
Well, I mean, they were... Yeah, dude, worship is the right word. I mean, dude, that guy, it sounded like he could do no wrong at that point. It was actually getting kind of annoying. So, you know, like, that was definitely a thing. All right, Group C. This is the one that I would like. Dude, G2, they don't miss a beat, man. They just smashed everybody. Big, and then they beat Navi twice without dropping a map. They don't drop a map in the entire group, and then they beat Navi twice, 2-0 both times. Holy smokes, dude. Like, Nico is a savage.
The only thing is, though, understand fans, even Nico can't play like that all the time. Like, he was absolutely on one in this one. Like, even Nico's going to have an off game every night. Like, if you don't know, his rating so far in the tournament is a 1.48.
Yeah.
Like, that's higher than when Simple was the MVP of the major, if people don't know. Like, when he broke all those, right? Like, no one's going to do that. So this is also, like, the joke is G2 has absolutely hit the ground running in a way no one could expect. Yeah, it's nuts. It's why I wonder what's going on in the team. Because remember, we haven't had any intimation. Like, are they just keeping Uxie? What are they doing? Like, what's going on, you know?
It's looking like it. It's looking like it. You haven't heard anything about it in terms of roster moves or anything like that. And I mean, dude, if you look this dangerous, if whatever you've got going for you, even if Nico were to drop even 10% in terms of performance, he's still going to be dangerous, right? He's so high up there that even if you were to bring him just a little bit back down to earth, he's still going to be a total beast.
Oh, sure.
You got Monacy, who's right up there with him. I mean, not pulling a 1.3 or 1.4, but 1.16 for Monacy. So that's your 1-2 punch combo right there. And then, you know, Hunter and JKS are also pulling their weight. It's looking like the team is actually functioning very well. So that bodes well. I mean, it's exciting to see, considering they ended last year strong by winning the World Finals for Blast. And then they're starting the year strong here. So you got to hope that finally this whole G2 project is going to come together, and we can actually see Nico start to chain some tournament wins together, because it really does feel like he's just caught the shit out of the stick for how many years now. It's just one of the absolute best players to touch the game, and yet not winning tournaments. You gotta hope for the guy.
I do a bit, but at the same time, he's also had a scenario I've never seen anyone have, Semmler, which is when I complain about, like, Simple scenarios over his career or other players, they were often in scenarios where it's like they just got, like, objectively bad players like Edward or fucking Zeus at the end next to them. Like,
fair enough.
Nico's had not only the FaZe Clan team, this G2 team has just fucking shipped millions around the world, mate. Like, he has got some fucking banger teammates as well, though. So I will say, one of my questions would be to Nico, like, mate, are you just the most unlucky player of all time? Because people sure seem to put a lot of super teams around you that degrade, and then you're the only one left who's good at the end. Like, that makes me start to ask questions. I'm just saying. And then, spoiler, half the time you then become the bloody IGL as well. But we'll see about that one. We'll see. Definitely good signs to start the year, especially because everyone else is so weak. Coming out of the player break, a lot of teams look really up and down, you know.
I mean, just about every team has got a new fifth player or a stand-in. Yep. So, you know.
By the way, the other people who can't catch a break is fucking Blast. Dude, the last event of the year, no one gives a shit. It's your World Championship. Then the first event of the year, we're going to use your first event like sort of a BYOC pick-up, warm-up fucking tournament and just fuck around, since you've made it so we've got like 17 fold eliminations. So why not? Like, they've got to fix this circuit, Semmler, because they've done this twice now. Like, no one really cares about this opening spring groups, and then no one cares about your world final. Like, something's off. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to find a way to get the magic back again.
Well, I wanted to add this. This actually ties in really nicely, because I have both of the viewership stats for both Blast Spring Premier, Blast Premier Spring 2022 groups and this year's groups, and it is actually really interesting in the sense that. Pardon me?
Has it gone down from last year?
Yes, it has gone down.
Right.
But again, you have to remember context, right? The Blast Spring Premier last year was, you know, like the return to normalcy in a sense. The hype was real. It was all, you know, it was
like the sixth land we'd had or something. Yeah, exactly. True.
Yeah. But like, you know, you're getting back into it, right? Like this is where we're in the flow. Sure. It's all good. You still got a bit of that pizzazz. Whereas, this year it definitely feels like they're trying to catch up, but like it's the big names. It's G2 Na'Vi. G2 Na'Vi are the highest watched games so far of the groups. 396,000 peak for G2 Na'Vi the second time around. Or no, the first time around. The second time around 355. So like they're still averaging lower. They're averaging 100,000 lower. We're 150,000 off the peak. And we're at literally half the hours watched. And we're almost at exactly the same amount of airtime now. We're 8 hours off on airtime. So there's going to be at least another, 8 hours, let's say average a day. So there's going to be at least another like 3 days worth of viewership. So we'll see if they can get those hours watched up. But even with a longer tournament, they aren't matching the viewership. So
there's also
I don't know what's going on with Blast.
Like, I'll tell you a few obvious problems I see in the format, Semmler. Since we can all agree in the modern day, the main way you make money is viewership, because you need to have all the eyeballs and sell them as sponsors. Everything you do, in theory, should be catered to having the most eyeballs possible. That's not the way they made their format. They made their format around the business that they're doing with their Blast partners. And they made it so difficult to get through the other portion. You have to basically be like the best player in the world, the team in the world, or just get lucky. Because think about look at the groups, look at these groups for this year, Semmler. Not only are there a bunch of teams where who gives a shit, like Complexity, Astralis, EG, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Anyone? Like, by the way, I could be mean and put Big in there, but at least Big, like, relative to what they're working with, is like a canny squad. They're not terrible.
Big have got some...
But those squads suck. Meanwhile, imagine if I could replace those teams I just mentioned, Samuel, with the following teams. Outsiders, Furia. Dude, you instantly win more. And also, the viewership's going to go crazy if you had those two teams. You put in Furia and Outsiders, we're going through the roof, mate. What are you talking about? Everyone from Brazil and fucking Russia's going to watch. So really in a way, I think the format, unfortunately, sort of scups them. And the reason I feel bad for them is this, Semmler. They designed this format, like the original version of it, when we were coming that year, where it was going to be LAN. Like, they didn't know it was going to be online. I feel like they've never recovered from the online thing. They tried to rejig it and they never figured out. Whereas, actually, fair play to ESL. ESL has actually like reinvented themselves in a way.
What's interesting to me, and this is where it really it should worry you a little bit, in the sense that if Na'Vi if there's tension in the team and they can't get their shit together, and the player, it seems like they aren't gelling the way that they used to, right? That's been something that's been observed for a bit now. If there's some kind of falling out with that team, they are 4 out of 5 top viewed matches of this tournament so far are Na'Vi matches. Like, they are a gigantic draw.
Oh, they're the number one draw, yeah, basically.
So if you lose Na'Vi...
Them and Brazilians are the most guaranteed hits in the game. It's Na'Vi or whoever the big Brazilians are. Yeah.
I mean, English is still the most viewed channel. Actually, ES Charts released a very... I love these kinds of articles, where the most popular tournament streamers and broadcast languages for 2022. They released this article. It'll be included in the description. So, if that sort of thing interests you, you can take a look at that. But one point that stood out for me in terms of CS:GO, in terms of viewership, is still English is still the dominant language, but Portuguese is right up there with it, or at least a third of the way down. And then Russian is still like right up there. So it really is that Na'Vi, dude. The Na'Vi fan base is monstrously huge. Like, they are still a huge draw, and you can see that right here with the 4 out of 5 of the top viewed matches. And even then, it's like G2 have definitely got some brand power. It's 396 peak G2 Na'Vi. You go down to Na'Vi Nip, in both times Na'Vi and Nip played, 292. So you're losing 100,000 peak right there between Na'Vi and Nip. As far as G2, Nip, who's playing against them, it matters. But like, Na'Vi are still the big draw of the tournament, no matter what. So you really got to hope that they're gonna stay sharp and stay together, and actually, figure out a way to bounce back as a team, because there's so many fans tuning in. So if you're a tournament organizer, you're concerned if it doesn't gel here with this team, you're going to be in trouble. But as far as Group C is concerned for this, I mean, G2, I mean, they just dispatched Na'Vi. Na'Vi, I don't really know what to make of them, man. Like, it feels so up and down. It feels like there's a lot of back and forth. Once again, there was like that whole segment that was really weird to watch, where Electronic and Blade just looked like they were having an argument with one another between maps, where they were just constant, like they were just sitting there, just, I mean, it like the body language read like an argument.
I will say, though, if we add in the culture, though, that is what they're all like in fucking Eastern Europe, mate. They're all
dude,
like that.
You listen to the comms of that team.
They're wild.
I mean, yes, okay, fair enough. That is definitely like the culture and the way that they carry on.
They're just very blunt, basically,
Yeah, it's there's no sugarcoating it over there. They're not really concerned with fifis. But it still kind of makes you wonder, like, okay, is this a team that's going to be able to figure it out? Because Electronic right now, whatever's going on with him as the IGL, it seems to be really putting a lot of pressure on him.
Dude, they actually did an interview like this the
performance.
other day, Semmler. They did an interview the other day. I think it was with Blade, where it was either Blade or it might have been Simple, actually, where it was implied that that's what they were going to do with the NPL guy, that they were going to like switch up sort of the roles in the team, and that to take the pressure off Electronic, he would just be the IGL. And the idea was they're going to try and make like Bit be what Electronic used to be, like the second star or whatever the fuck, you know. So that was what was implied, I think, from someone can maybe corroborate. I'm going from memory. I don't have it on paper, obviously, but I think that's what was said. So it sounds like they at least acknowledged Semmler that he's not going to frag like he did when they first made him IGL. You know, like that first Blast tournament, he was like fragging and IGL. Maybe there's no problem. Like, it turns out there is. Like he hasn't going to do that every time, is he? But at least they seem aware of it.
It may just wonder. Like the thing is, dude, I can only like the way that I was thinking about this the other day is that to me the way this sounds with Blade is that it sounds like a micromanaging boss. You know what I mean? Like where you're supposed to be the IGL if you're Electronic, and if you're an IGL, well then you should have some leeway, right? Like it's your game to call and you're supposed to be getting it done. But to me, Blade still feels like an IGL. Like the way that he's got those papers, the way he plans out the T side, the way he plans out the strategy, the way that it's all kind of like in minutiae just decided by him. It still feels to me like Blade is the sixth man IGL, and Electronic, he's in this weird place where he's supposed to be the IGL, but he's being micromanaged by Blade the entire time. And so it's trying to constantly find this way to work it out where it's like, okay, we're using Blade's system, but I'm still calling. And it just feels like that's a recipe for like where it worked out at first, where perhaps they were really synced up. But when Electronic starts having his own opinions about how the game should be played and how they should use their players, and that's not working with Blade, it feels like Blade is going to be the one who's going to have the final say in that scenario, because it basically is his team. Like this is Blade's team. He might as well be the IGL. So
like
I feel like that could be a big
Twitter.
reason why Electronic is experiencing this significant drop in performance, is because now he's got this mental thing going on where he's got to worry about Blade.
I actually had a similar take to this on Twitter where I basically said, because a bunch of the FaZe people were making the point that like they actually think it's unfair that Robban was kind of dismissed to be like coach of the year or whatever the fucking like all the HLTV awards. And I get what they mean, but it's because of the way the narrative works. Because the narrative is Carragher is the super genius who makes all the calls he wants on the fly.
Indeed, exactly.
It makes you think, does Robban do anything? He does, by the way, he just doesn't do specific that stuff. But then the thing is, on the Blade side, he's the best contrasting example, because since we all do think Blade is the mastermind and he's probably trying to input all of his stuff, the joke is we don't give any credit to the IGLs. We just think they do nothing and they're just Blade's puppet. Because that is kind of how it sounds like it's set up. I'm with you, Semmler. Like,
but I think that's exactly how it's
Electronic's
set up.
job is to actually... Electronic's job is to make Blade's vision come true.
Yes, precisely. And I used to say it. I used to say that in a way, I think I was naive, where I thought that because, Electronic is Blade's protege, they would see the game the same way. But now that we've seen it in action a bit, and now that I feel like I've seen them play a bit more, and I've seen some interactions, some interviews, all that sort of thing. Like basically this last year of watching it work, I feel like what's actually going on is that Blade is the IGL. And Electronic, again, like, because nobody can think that Boomich was honestly the IGL of that team. Like, come on, let's be real. And I think it's the same thing playing out here with Electronic, where I think, I think it's Blade who's the actual IGL. He's the one who has the final call on everything. And Electronic is now probably stuck in this place where he's not a rifler anymore. He's supposed to be an IGL, but he doesn't get the final say on anything. I legitimately think that that's what's going on. And that's why we're seeing this breakdown in communication on the Na'Vi team and why things are starting to fall apart a little bit. It is what it is. We'll see how it pans out, and we'll see if they can turn around.
Here's what I wish, Semmler, because there's actually a way we could figure it out and test it. You just have to revert the old Valve coaching rules. If they reverted them, does Blade, and basically like the joke is, here's the joke. Because I'll give a pop culture reference that this Mart isn't from 1991, so the kids might get it, Semmler. You know that scene everyone was loving in fucking House of the Dragon, where that guy walked in all swagged out that you thought was all wrecked, that king guy, but he just sort of walked in like, That's how Blade would walk in the next day after Valve announces like coaches can be the IGL. He'd just be like, well, Electronic, you're back to just entry, mate. I'm here. It's my time, finally. You know what? I never even really wanted any to be IGL in the first place, but now I'm here. Like, he'd just take over like the God Emperor, wouldn't he? Of course.
He would. It would, but dude, think about it. Navi have a track record with this because Starix was literally doing that.
He was the guy who basically got the fucking shit shut down, exactly.
Yep. When Valve
too good.
Shut that down,
yeah.
It was when Starix was literally IGLing for the team as the sixth man. That's the context of the time. And Valve didn't want to have anything to do with that.
I even think there's a parallel between them because one of the reasons I used to give Starix mad props when he did that role was you could see how disciplined that team played. And like the only other Navi team that's ever played like that is the one with Blade now. It's the same shit, right?
Yeah. And dude, just oh man, it's so funny to think about that sort of stuff, right? Like fucking A. Yeah, no, it's it really is it's brutal, but like this reminds me of what James was saying, where he thinks that it's unfair that certain teams, that teams have notes, and that you should just, as a pro, you should remember. But like, think about it. In that context, what he means,
yeah.
You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
In that context, if you know that your opponent, your greatest rival from the region, the coach is literally writing out the whole game plan for the T side, so that the players, all they have to do is look at the notes, like, what are we doing in the 5th round? Okay, right? Like that. At that point, do you have an IGL or do you have a coach behind you?
Here's the problem. Even though I agree. Why James and his team could also do it. So by their logic, Semmler, think about this logically. If James is a better IGL than Electronic, and they had a good coach, they'd be even better. They'd use this to win every major. Because I'll say this, the only problem with that one is that smacked a little bit of years ago when Valens, the coach at the time of like, I think he was actually still in EG at the time. I think he made that comment where he was like, teams should just release the demos from scrims, like we're going to get the info anyway.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, because it's the same vibe. Like when James says that sounds like, I don't even think anyone should be allowed to do homework or prep for the test. I think we should all just have to turn up on the day and then whoever's good, just pass it. It just sounds like that, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
Your notes. You're not allowed to have
like
notes during a test. What is this? That's the point. Yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything else that stood out for you from the group so far before going into the play-ins?
No, I'll just reiterate what I just said before. Now that I've seen this format play out a bunch of times, this is an example of what I said about when me and Monty were making the format. Like, it's a bit underwhelming, I've got to say. Like, when I first heard, so it'll be like best of 3 GSL groups, I usually love that format. And that's not even going to get you eliminated. That, like, that's just seeding that puts you into a bracket. And then you get an extra 2 That sounds great. But if you ever look at the way it actually plays out, I don't know if it's because it's the first tournament after the player break every year. Maybe that's it. But somehow it never does seem to be that fire. Like, you always seem to get a lot of, like, weird, like, kind of shit upsets with, like, a nobody team. Like the one where EG won. Like, you just get, it's not like they're great. These are, like, this won't be remembered, same as it wasn't last year. This won't be remembered as a great fucking opening stanza to a tournament. It was just all right, I don't know what it is. I haven't figured it out, but something about that format, it doesn't seem to, like, work in practice as well as you would think in theory, if you know what I mean.
It's just, I think it's just maximizing, again, it's just maximizing viewership. It's just maximizing hours.
Oh, it's good to get guaranteed viewing hours. Yeah, of course.
Trying to,
sure.
Right? Trying to get that. But, that's just the way that one breaks. Should we talk about we can talk about, there really isn't too much to take away from the Katowice talent roster. I mean, we can move on to Katowice now if we're good on that, because there was some news coming out from Katowice. Well, I guess now the obvious one is that we can look forward to Config on NIP. That's when we get to see him play on that roster. But there was also the Katowice talent announcement.
Where is the talent announcement? Is it not in this document or something?
Oh no, I don't think I added that one. Here, I can put it in.
Just link me.
It's on HLTV, but I'll put it in at the bottom here, Katowice.
I remember I had a brief look, and the first thing I did think was like, "Where's Moses?" And I remembered myself, like, "Wait a minute, he's my own friend, and I know he's having a child." Like, so there's that.
Right. That. But then also, the
where's
thing
the
is, it's like, okay, where's Moses? Fair enough. But this is where it makes me wonder. It's like, shit, where's Anders?
Can I have the link, please?
Oh, I thought I'll put it in the Discord.
Didn't send it to me.
Hey,
did you send it to?
I'll put it in the Discord. I put it at the bottom of the document.
Oh, right. I see what you mean. Okay, fair enough. Let me show you.
But it's in the Discord now.
Okay.
No, what like the thing is, like, the thing that stood out to me.
There's
is
a few things jump out to me.
This ESL Face It alliance, in a sense, has just completely screwed anybody who was on the outside of that. Because now you're going to get Bardolph, who's going to be able to come in and use.
No one noticed that, No one noticed that, Semmler. If people don't get it, Like, this is going to be speculation because I don't know their situation, but it's actually informed speculation from knowing the past setup of the companies. The logic would be this, is what you're basically saying, right, Semmler, is if FaZe's involved, not only are they A, going to advocate and ask for Bardolph to be in, but B, he might even still be under contract to him. Maybe you don't even pay the same, I don't know how that works. Like, maybe, do the actors an agent for him?
He's almost certainly still working for FaZe.
Yeah, so unfortunately, basically, it's not about was he the best. He's probably just getting this gig no matter what now FaZe's there, right? Because it is a bit out of nowhere. Like, if people don't know, Bardolph doesn't even cast CSGO anymore, as far as I know. He doesn't cast like other games now. Yeah. As far as I know, he's in Apex Legends or some weird game, right?
He's doing Apex Legends. He's doing racing streams. He's doing his own thing. I mean, dude,
they just sim racing as well. Yeah,
probably had a good chunk of FaceIt stock, when they got purchased and all that. So he's probably
made out like a
off now. He's probably all good.
Yep.
So on that front, it's like he's working because he wants to, not because he has to. And also, I mean, that this is the advantage. It's also Freya is an employee of FaceIt.
That's true.
So that's also worth keeping in mind. And so now all of a sudden, now that merger has gone through, Freya's joining up on the ESL side. Getting the Descos one before that wouldn't have happened. ESL wouldn't have allowed it. They'd have looked for somebody else. But now also you see Bardolph working an ESL event, working in Katowice, nonetheless. I mean, which is one of the flagship events for ESL. So to see Bardolph working a Katowice event, that's just mind-blowing.
And by the way,
huge shift in the caster dynamics.
I'll throw this one out there because it seems obvious actually now, but I missed it myself when it was the Rio Major. Remember, for the Rio Major, they had Shox there, but she was only like an interviewer or whatever. That's because obviously she was doing Worlds for most of it, wasn't she? So similarly, the reason why Shox is like desk host but / sideline is I assume she just won't work the whole event. Like, she'll be doing LEC at the same time as well. So I assume what'll happen is she'll do parts of it and like maybe she'll do the playoffs, or I assume she just won't be doing it full time. Because otherwise, I guess if she wanted to do it properly, she would be the main host. I'm almost certain.
Well, I mean, I don't think she would be the main host because you still have to have some loyalty to Stunna. Stunna has been ESL's man, but then again, I mean, they've nearly cut him in the past, so there's no loyalty with any of these companies.
There's no loyalty with ESL.
I don't even know why
I've told you this story before, Semmler. This is the story I heard. I'll just fucking say it. I don't care anymore. I've heard Harry and Hugo basically just charged a lot less, and they became the prime people. And if you want to know when they stop charging less, it's when they weren't the prime people anymore. That's how ESL operates. They're not friends. What they're doing when you undercut is they're sort of saying, I agree. If you give me a massive financial region, I'll put you in the best spot. Right, well, I don't want to give you that financial discount. Well, then you don't get the best spot. See ya. No loyalty. ESL just did it because it made sense business-wise. Like,
yes. It's also building up. It's the same way that Blast built up Scrawny and Launders. It's the same way. But Blast are squandering that investment now by allowing ESL to take part in it instead of locking Scrawny and Launders down into some kind of exclusive contract with them. The Blast, like Scrawny and Launders wouldn't be a thing without Blast. So it really is like it's really a weird time when it comes to like the caster dynamics now, where it really feels like we almost have a mono party. Like it is a monopoly in a sense, because you're going to have the same casters everywhere now, whereas before you might have had DDK and Bardolph were just FaceIt, right? Like they weren't really doing much else. Anders and I were doing E-League, for example, and then Sato and Henry were doing ESL, and maybe you had some mixing for the majors, but apart from that, it was pretty like there was a reason why you would watch certain tournaments if you wanted certain casters. Now it feels like you're really going to go into this space where it's going to be the same casters everywhere. Blast, ESL.
What was the reason you said for Anders?
I
did see he did like a tweet thread where he explained what's going on. What was it? What was the reason Anders wasn't doing the event?
Well, I can only assume that Anders isn't. I didn't see a thread from Anders. I missed that.
He did like a tweet thread recently about like where he is in casting.
Oh, at the beginning of the year.
But that was more like general stuff. It's stuff that you've heard before, mate. Don't worry.
Well, the thing, like the only thing that I can assume that happened here is because Moses isn't there. This is just me speculating as a commentator, the way that I look at things in terms of commentary. But the way that I see this is just ESL are bringing. They could develop Haka. He's not going to be able to charge much, so he's going to make sense in terms of finances. Bardolph probably doesn't even cost them anything because, as you say, and I think he's still a FaceIt employee. So you have a free commentary pair there, basically free. I mean, you pay Haka a decent day rate, but you don't need to pay him anything extravagant, and there you go. You're saving money. And then you have your two flagship duo, right? Machine Sponge, Hugo and Just Harry. And then you nod to the you nod to the community because the community really likes Ronnie and Launders right now, and it costs you nothing and it takes away from Blast's clout. So you bring Scrawny and Launders in because that undermines Blast and also gives the cake to the community. So that's how I read it. And then Anders costs a lot. He's been around for 10 years. He charges top rate. So you want to start phasing Anders out if you're ESL, I think, at this point, and start, working him out of the circuit because he costs a lot on a day. And this is just me thinking if I was in like
makes sense.
after 10 years in the industry, this is just how I think. This is how I would play it if I was in this position. And this is how ESL have played it. And ESL have told me shit in the past where it's just like, yeah, we'll never allow these certain duos. We'll never allow this. We'll never allow that. We're never going to allow you to have this kind of like ESL are not, they are constantly looking to keep people like down or break them up or divide and conquer and keep them fighting against each other. That's why I still don't understand from my perspective why casters would be mixing up duos at all, because that only weakens their negotiating power against ESL. So ESL are they're delighted when commentators are, oh, you want to split up, do you? Oh, you want to cast with him? Oh, we'll go right ahead. Yeah, do that. No problem. Just undermines the entire, any kind of leverage that you have in a negotiation going forward. If you guys aren't a group, you got nothing at this point. So because you've got 2 tournament organizers, it's not like you had 5 like we used to have in the day. So you could like, DreamHack and Star Series, and you could like go to a bunch of different ones and like negotiate and have some fun with it. Now it's like you got ESL and you got Blast. If you're not good with either one of those, you're fucked. And then if you're not even having a duo, you're on your own, homie. If they don't like you, this is what Anders is finding out now. It's like, if they don't like you, you're gone. They just don't hire you. So it's fucking brutal for Anders right now. Because, I mean, listen, Moses has the best reason to take time off. Fucking A. You can't fault him that. It's awesome. But I'm surprised. Like, it's really brutal for Anders, and I wonder, like, what did Anders do to jockey? Like, did he try and jockey? Did he offer a different duo? Did he try to do anything? Like, we're seeing him cast with Maui right now. Did he go to ESL and say, hey, like, can I cast with Maui for this event or something? Like, did he offer anything, or did ESL just give him the cold shoulder and say, actually, we're just bringing Bardolph and Hawk in because they're not going to cost us any money? Like, what was the play here? Or are they actually trying to like signal to Anders that he's on his way out? Like, I've got questions. Because
one problem
ESL are absolutely capable of doing that. ESL are 100% capable of doing that, and that is definitely in the cards.
Yeah, but here's my problem with that whole scenario, Semmler.
Okay, go for it.
If indeed Anders gets squeezed out by ESL, the only person he has to blame is in the mirror.
Okay.
What has he ever done when they've... What has Anders ever done as retribution for ESL fucker with him all these years? Nothing. He is the ultimate guy. The worst thing in this scenario, I think this is actually a really bad move tactically in his career, is he's the guy that you can fuck over and then just come back 3 months later and just be polite and he'll just work with you again. Like, if you do that, mate, I'm sorry. Even if you're the great... By the way, let's be real. Anders is a fucking GOAT contender for like all esports commentators. Like, that's fucking sad that at this point in your career, ultimate status, like, you're just still letting ESL tool you around. Like, that's just fucking sad, mate. The problem I have with that issue is this is where I'll give people a bit of inside info. This is where Flashpoint did change esports for me. Because when I had to be the one negotiating with people and then they were doing like all those silly games with me, I'd start to get a little bit of sympathy for these TOs and be like, actually, some of these fucking talent are annoying. And it's the same with the thing about players before. They'll say one thing to one guy and then one thing to another, and then they purposely don't say much info when it helps them. And then when it does, they have all the info. Like, it does get a bit tiresome. So that problem with that one is like, Anders basically waited until his stock isn't at the absolute top level and then didn't make a power move. Like, his power moves could have been made years ago. He could run the scene right now if he wanted to,
In what sense, though? What do you mean by that?
He used to be the #1 commentator hired by every single event. That means you have the ultimate fucking supply and demand status. Like, he could have had all sorts of relationships. He could have had years-long deals with ESL. He could have had or he could have been the one who had the exclusive Blast contract for the biggest salary in the world. He could have had all these. Instead, what he did is what we all did, Semmler. Look, I didn't make the best decisions either. We all sat in a joint pool of talent and just fucking fought each other undercutting until some of us got some events, some did, and then at the end, hopefully, it all shook out and we all got like some events, and then at the end, here's the problem with that scenario. This is why it wasn't a good strategy. Who won? No one. ESL. You just said it earlier.
No. Like, ESL won.
Yeah, you're right. But none of the talent. Like, did Scotty and Launders win? Remember, they surpassed Launders. No, they didn't. Even they're in a spot where they're now the ones being torn from all angles. Did fucking Harry and Hugo win? Yeah, they won initially, and then they didn't as much. Did Anders and Moses? No, like, you see what I mean? Like, the only person who won was ESL at the end. Like, the TOs actually played us all. They played us all. And by the way, I will say as well.
There is the other side of this is the thing is the big what would it be like the pushback against Room on Fire was that we were all talent, and so we were all still still technically competitors with one another. Even though Room on Fire, at least initially, worked wonderfully, it fell apart because, again, infighting and like trying to figure out like who does what and all that. It definitely got a bit spicy. But like
one day, you know what, Semmler, one day, it doesn't have to be today.
And manage that full
but one
time.
day you have to let the statute of limitations go on and just say the names of the people who fucked up Room on Fire. Because it's a very short list and those names are mad spicy. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Maybe you get annoyed enough by someone, we'll see.
I don't know. It's like it wouldn't change anything. Like it is what it is.
It doesn't matter at all, but it is funny if you know the names. Like, because it seems so obvious in hindsight, doesn't it?
It just makes me wonder like where we could have been if like
that's
I
what
just
I'm
stepped
referring
back
to.
from commentary and just tried to run Room on Fire as an agent at that point, and we could have had like a group that only promotes talent and like offers like a one-stop shop to all tournaments, because that was the point of Room on Fire, was to offer a one-stop shop. Like, you need analysts, you need commentators, you need hosts. Here's all these guys. We can do different combinations. Here's the prices, blah, blah. And, you could use group leverage in that point, so then it's all like, you could do group packages and make it all nice and neat and really easy for TOs. It was really loads of fun. There was a lot of potential there. And then we all just kind of squandered it. It's definitely going to be one of those things where I look back and be like, we could have done a better job there. But again, that's one of those things where, hindsight's 2020. But the way that it currently stands for, I don't envy commentators. I don't envy, if your talent right now in CS:GO, it's about to get really fucking brutal, because you've got ESL, you've got Blast, and that's pretty much it. So if you're not in with either one of those, ESL are making it abundantly clear they've got their top two duos. Machine Sponge, Harry Hugo. They can bring in Scrawny and Launders if they need it, and then I legit think that Bardolph and Hawka are only there because they're cheap. Bardolph is probably free, and Hawka is probably a third of the day rate. Like whatever. And
Hawka's just super eager. He'll do any event. Yeah, exactly. He's still trying to break in.
No, he's Harry and Hugo essentially, in the sense that he's not going to be able to charge anything. So you get him for a good price, and there you go. So you save some money there. You go down the list: YNK, Maniac, Maui Snake, Kassad, Blay, and Peacemaker. All of this is good. It's just, it sucks to see Peace instead of Pimp, because Pimp just keeps getting the shaft from ESL. Whatever is going on with Pimp, he's just
I don't get it.
verboten at ESL. So tough break for Pimp there. Would have liked to have seen him at that
especially because, you know what, I'm just going to say it. Even though I did a really long interview with him and I do like him, mate, the analyst desk, this is like the devil walk thing. The analyst desk is all about being really good at speaking in a really concise and efficient way. Peacemaker speaks too slowly and his English isn't good enough. I'm just going to say it. If he doesn't like it, he can fucking contact me. I'll tell him to his face. I'll add in a few insults. Don't worry, I'm just getting annoyed about nothing on that. But basically, the point is like, that's like so rude to Pimp. Like, you might not think Pimp's the best. You're not hiring the best. You're hiring your sixth guy. He's not even the sixth guy. He's done every event for like 3 years, guys. Like, this guy, there are things you can dislike about Pimp, but let's be real. He is a better analyst than Peacemaker. That's not hate on Peacemaker. Peacemaker's a coach. Peacemaker needs to put in his years like everyone else. Like, it's all about game knowledge. I think I do agree. This just sets a precedent. Like, ESL is just the fuck Pimp org now. They don't care about Pimp for some reason.
Just makes me wonder, like, what is driving what is driving your vision? Like, what's your producer? Who's your producer? Who's your manager over at ESL? Who's got the vision for what you want to create for the show? Because right now I'm getting mixed signals. I'm getting a mix of, you're willing to bring in guys who don't cast CS:GO anymore, i.e. Bardolph. You're willing to bring in coaches. You're willing to bring in coaches and analysts and basically say that a coach is an analyst. So again, is there any level of showmanship there? Is there anything that matters? I mean, like, if you're ESL and you're brutal in this, and you really are like taking it to the extreme cynical side of things, where you're saying, okay, I don't give a fuck about analysts because analysts are glorified commercial breaks anyways, and they're just there to keep eyeballs during the commercial breaks. Well then, okay, fine, fair enough. I guess then it doesn't really matter. Then you're going to go for price, and I guess they can get Peacemaker at a very good price, and so he may be costing less than Pimp, and then maybe it's just that pragmatic, the same kind of point that I made with Bardolph and Hawka, they're making with Peacemaker, where they're like, hey, yeah, whatever, we'll get him. He probably costs a third of what the other guys are charging, and we can bring him in for that. That may very well be the way that they're operating. The same goes for up top. I mean, as far as the hosts,
I've got a name that is missing.
Go for it.
Where's Frankie? She's already announced she's going to work with ESL Impact. Like, remember, it's not about, I can't be seen with the Saudi thing. She can work with the Saudis now. She's already working with them. So why is she not in the mix? That almost implies she's not going to be in the big events. Like, you've already crossed the Rubicon, love. You may as well go for it.
That's a good
Or
point.
does ESL not want that? I don't know, because if you notice, they have a lot of names in that host interviewer talent section, right? They got
the
a lot
thing
of
is,
names.
you've got Freya. If you're Frankie, you're kind of on the outside looking in right now, right? Shox has got a long history with ESL.
Yep.
Freya is Face It, and is Face It. So you're gonna have to compete with Freya. Not gonna happen. Stunna is OG ESL as well, and I think that ESL are showing a shred of loyalty to him. So
Yes,
they're
that
not
does
gonna
seem to be
replace
the
him with
one person they're
Thundergirl.
loyal to. I'll give them that.
You know, he's probably one of the only ones now. Even though they tried to fuck him over in the past, it seems like he's all right now. You're not going to do OJ's job. OJ is the fucking mic man for these big events, and that's pretty much it. You're not taking that away from him. That's it. Like, what else are you going to do? I mean, I guess you could do Darth Mike's job. That's probably where you're going to go. But then again, if we're talking about budget and price, I mean, you probably spent a lot of your budget already on Shox.
Let's be real. He's almost certainly doing either the worst game or the B stream. One of the two, right?
Sorry.
Darth Mike is either going to be doing the worst
Darth
game
Mike is
your
guy who's getting his foot in the door, and he's probably doing it for a fraction of the cost.
So you're also not hiring Frankie for that job anyway. You're right. Yeah.
No. And then you've got Heku, who you're trying to build up right now, and again, who's probably not charging top rate either. You're probably getting Heku.
I mean, just from where she's from, I imagine she's cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably getting her at a very good price. So why are you going to get Frankie, who lives in London? You know, like who's going to be charging top rate when you can have Heku, who is you're currently developing.
And then of course you got to have Banks because of the Navi Nation and BNE and other conflicts of interest. So no, whatever. That's just a joke, isn't it?
Then you got Banks. Can we get some Banks in the chat?
The joke is, if you look at the fact he is hired to like every event, he must actually just be like the Banks. He's too big to fail. They can't fucking cut this guy. It's ridiculous. I'll tell you what I want. I want some fucking audit the Fed, aka James Banks. Whatever.
Well, he does lie as much as the Banks, doesn't he? So there you go. Oh, fucking A. This whole thing. I mean, it's like. That's my read on this situation is like you have some of the old hands that are going to be there and that are going to be ESL men through and through. Sponge Machine, like they're ESL men through and through. They're company men. OJ Borg, same thing. Stunna, same thing. Freya, same thing.
This is something I made a tweet about, but it's the same as with the teams. You know, I told you the flaw with the Blast circuit is it's just a cut down version of what ESL gives you. So, you know, in the same way as with the teams, you don't get as many of the teams because it's not as big an event. It's the same with the talent. Like, that's why, as you said, the key point you made last year was that it's game over the second that Scrawny and Launders just do ESL events, because now an ESL event is all your favorite talent from Blast plus the other favorite talent that aren't at Blast. Like, how do you compete with that? You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you might love a Mars bar Semmler, but if you have the choice of Mars bar plus a pick and mix, well, that wins because it's what you like and other stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you beat that?
Yeah, you're done. No, that's pretty much it. Because what you've got your desk host, you have Maniac and Maui who are already there.
And the casters.
You're only missing
casters,
Tim,
right?
You've got Scrawny and Launders. You're missing Anders and Moses, basically.
And that's from separate reasons. They would be here if they could be, probably.
There you go. So no, it's you're toast now. I mean, you got nothing if you're blasted. You don't really have any way to stand out now. You're on ESL's coattails. But we established that at the end of last year. I mean, we're going into monopoly times in CS:GO, and it's gonna get pretty brutal.
Also, here's another thing as well that people don't think about. There's actually an angle for ESL that I get slightly annoyed at because fucking Chad essentially created this for them. Because for some reason, even though ESL has no loyalty, Chad has unending loyalty to ESL for some bizarre reason I still don't really understand myself. I think part of it's because he just knows some of the people in the company who were German when he was living there. Something weird like that.
Pragmatist. I think he's a pragmatist. I think he's just like, ESL is the game in town. And like, if it's like I said, where I had an old friend who was asking me same thing, where it's just like, why would you not go with ESL? Like, why did you go with E-League? Why did you go with Flashpoint? Why did you go with these others? It's like, if you're a pragmatist, if you were just going to be like, I want to be in this as long as possible, and it's just about making money and talking about Counter-Strike, and I want to be in this as long as possible, of course you would go with ESL. You go all in on ESL because you know that they're gonna be even what 6-7 years ago, that ESL would be the safe bet. Would be, if you really wanted to do that, that would be it. That would be the safe bet. You go with ESL. But we didn't want that. We wanted to, we wanted to the Rebels. We wanted to do the more exciting projects, the more fun projects. And
it's why Blast can't win though. This is why Blast can't win, because there's actually an angle people haven't thought of, which is, imagine Blast's broadcast in every sense was better than ESL's and the talent was just as good. Here's what what ESL could do that Blast can't, and it's actually game over, right? Blast could actually say to Machine and Sponge, we just want to hire you for your old roles, right? Spoiler, Freya's really good. She ain't Machine. I'll tell you what, I love Maniac. You ain't fucking sponge. Anytime that duo, which at the moment they're just trying to be the best casters, anytime they want to go back to their old gigs, and they are ESL's boys, you've got what Blast could have had. Semmler, you've got the unique thing that they can't have. You know, they can only have that occasionally. So I think ESL has all the fucking marbles, mate. It's going to be so hard for Blast from here on out. They're playing from behind the 8 ball and other references.
It's going to be very hard for everybody from here on out. If you're on the talent side of things, you need to, you need to get in good with ESL. That's going to be the way forward. Don't really see anything around it. All right, should we answer some questions? Let's answer some questions. I think it's about time. We are still, if you are still holding GrogCoin, we are changing how that is working, and that is something we talked about last week as well. How that's
already been taken care of. So the key thing is, if you put it this way, I believe they even sent an email. They were messaging it on the Discord. It was already being resolved, that thing. So if you missed it, then you just missed it, mate. Like, I can't help you with that. You have to pay attention. You know, It was your property. So as far as I know, they've taken care of everyone. I don't know how much I can say, but they've done whatever they were going to do to reward everyone with what they got. That
much is taken care of. It's just a question. It's just addressing, why people
what we're going to do next.
Able to ask questions right now.
Sure.
It's people who are holding GrogCoin, which was supporting the show. We're coming up with a new way to support the show after that, and you guys are going to be tied into that.
It's going to get figured out soon. Don't worry.
It'll be figured out soon, and all of that'll be squared. But we do have questions for tonight, so we're going to go ahead and hop right into those now. And a big thank you for everybody who's been asking questions. You guys are always so good about it. Last week, short notice, you blew me away with all the questions. It was great. And we've got a bunch of them tonight as well. So starting off, Santiago La Farga. What's one stand-up comedian you think is underrated and why?
Stand-up comedian that's underrated, right? The problem with all topics, spoiler, and I should know about underrated, overrated is, the other people listening right now don't do what I'm about to do, which is go, what's like a general sense of like reading the room of what people think? They just go, here's what I think. So what happens now, Semmler, is if I say someone they rate, I'm wrong immediately, even if everyone else underrates it. So I'll just do it legit. I'll just do who I actually think's underrated. I think the most underrated comedian ever is probably Doug Stanhope. Because I actually think he's a contender for like the best stand-up comedian ever. He's unbelievable. Like, you can go to any era of his work. It changes over the years. He's a naturally funny guy. He just comes up with great stuff. Like, the difference is, everyone now probably going to be, I already know Doug. Yeah, but he's not hailed like Louis C.K. or fucking George Carlin or Bill. He's in that category for me. I think he's one of the absolute all-time greats. He's amazing, I think. I think he's a banger.
He's like, doing the whole thing as well, where he's got his whole little group going. Like, he's got his own...
Here's what made me realize how good he was, Semmler. I already liked him before, but that was when I actually agreed with a lot of his opinions and life perspective. I now don't agree with most of his opinions and life perspective, but he's still just as funny. That's how I know he's mega. You know what I mean? When they can make you laugh when you don't really agree with it. Like, you're just a good comedian then, mate.
He had some amazing sets back in the day. Some of the most outrageous sets. That one where he's wearing a Dodgers jersey, I think it was, and oh man, I can't even remember like the name of the set, but it's just, you got some legendary sets there. So good.
I know the one you're on about.
You know which one I'm on about. It's one of the most outrageous sets done, and it's just so good. I know who you're talking about now, Doug Stanhope. But
that was from the special called No Refunds, and that was a very good one. I remember. Yes.
There you go.
And it was like a Yankees jersey, it was some baseball jersey. He did a segment
about like jersey. I can't remember if it was Dodgers or Yankees or what.
One of them, yeah. It wasn't Yankees, but it was one of the big ones. Yeah, sure.
Blue and white. But yeah, no, okay, I get you on that one. The problem is, I'm not as well. It's like, okay, it's a question of favorite.
It must be someone Swedish, right? Is there not someone Swedish that we just don't know?
No, I mean, I don't know Swedish comedy.
Oh, wait a second, mate. You've just reminded me of something so insane. I have to do it. Right, I'm going to rewind. Do you remember a couple of episodes ago, I complained about that Dagny Viberg woman who worked with the Metro Esports Awards? When the Metro Esports Awards happened, guys, I forgot this. You guys aren't going to remember because even the awards itself wasn't as big as the Esports Awards. They had a warm-up act, and the warm-up act was a comedian. And this is comedians famously, like if you're like an American comedian, you come to London, you ask your British comedian friends, like, give me some references, guys. Like, oh, they'll be like, make a reference to this football player. Like, you make a reference like Bellingham or something in football. Reference like, Big Ben and like, driving on the left-hand side. And what you do is you try in your act to make a bunch of local references audiences because you think it'll make it'll break the ice, you'll go over better. So this guy tried to do that using esports, guys. And this is not a joke. You're going to think I'm making it shitter than it is. This was literally one of his jokes. He came out, do you remember this, Semmler? And he goes, so why are they always rushing B though?
Yeah.
And I'm not even joking. It was like dead in this room. Like there was only me, I think, just laughing like, what the fuck? Like that's a real joke. Like, mate, here. So what's the deal? Why are they? I always want to know why they're always rushing B. It's like, please.
And he was fucking asking.
It was so
he was
bad.
asking the players' names and shit. Like he was literally putting his. He didn't even know what was. And this is Al Pitcher. Yeah. Al Pitcher, British comedian who.
Oh, is actually a comedian you know? I didn't know.
Yeah, enough. His whole thing was. I interviewed him for Gamers.
Oh,
If you remember that reality TV show, we had a podcast, Good Morning Gamers,
right?
And he showed up one day, so we did an interview there. Okay. Got to chatted up with him a bit, but like he put that whole set together. Like he didn't even know what the purpose of the show was. He just like his agent booked him for the night, and there you go. And so he was just showing up. He was just going in, and so he was coming up with jokes. He was asking for players' names and shit, behind the stage. Just. And I'm like, fine, fair enough. I mean, the guy did it. The guy did his thing.
I didn't even know he was a real comedian. That's even crazy.
It was brutal. No, he apparently was like super successful doing like this whole foreigner, like the foreigner in Sweden kind of thing, right? Right. And that was his whole thing. So I guess he's trying to lean into that. But yeah, I remember, dude, it went over like a lead balloon. It was brutal. Dude, like that's the thing. Underrated. Like that's the thing, underrated. I don't really have an underrated one in the sense that I think like that's the problem is for a period of time there, I could listen to Bill Burr all day. And I was listening to his podcast. I was listening to everything. Like I was just listening to everything. And so it's like, underrated and why? It's just like underrated. He was right on the money, but I feel like he really tried to find that line and then stay on the line. And then he started playing it a bit too safe. And I think I got turned off on him because he started instead of real, like you can't make a whole series of jokes for years about how there's too many people and you need a pandemic. And then when the pandemic comes in, you can't start acting, like you can't start acting like it's like you've literally been telling jokes about how you need to wipe out large swaths of the population for years. And then it actually, in theory starts happening. And then you're like, oh no, I don't know. I kind of lost it. The
problem he has is this:
going crazy on that.
If you know his actual personal life, you'll know every issue with his comedy. By the way, it's still an amazing comedian. Most of his jokes are funny. Even the joke is like he even does those jokes, Semblers, that are just expressly anti-white jokes, but they're just such good jokes. I laugh, even though I disagree totally with the premise of what he's saying. It's still funny. But the problem is, Semmler, when you know his actual family life at home. The joke is like he's like trapped in a fucking mind watched in his own house, mate. Like he's never gonna. That's gonna unfortunately be a limiting factor.
His wife killed his edge is exactly it for Costin. Like his wife killed his edge.
And didn't he have a kid now or something? So like that
combined
he has a kid
now.
Like,
he's done. And the thing is like he has like big series and all that. Like the comic series. So now he's beholden. So he really can't punch upwards because if he punches upwards, that's it. Like his whole thing is done. It's brutal. It's like the golden handcuffs in a sense where it's just like it's going to be the whole point of being a comedian is that you should be able to just say whatever. Like your whole job is to be the heel and just and call it out, right? Say the emperor has no clothes. So yeah, I kind of lost track of him on that one.
Oh, good.
All right. Snake Gold. How would you implement benching? Okay, hold on. How would you implement benching on esports? For whatever reason, I thought you literally meant like bench press or something, but no, benching as in benching players. Does it have to be different from sports? This is this whole conversation again about whether esports is sports and can you just swap players in and out without any repercussion? I mean, I feel like we've talked this topic to death.
For me, there's an obvious reason that's very, very different that I can just say quickly and we won't have to do a massive thing, right? In Counter-Strike, you have 7 different maps. In League of Legends, you have 150 or 60 champions, right? it's not the same as like football. It's the same pitch every time. It's like,
Same
you know,
pitch is the same ball.
Like the variables are too crazy. So that, in my opinion, the biggest problem with doing benching and subs and stuff is that you usually want to sort of like there's essentially like you have to sort of have the same core of players. You can't swap people in and out and change the. Like, it's already the games themselves contain so much complexity. I don't think you can do it personally. At least I've never seen a game that worked. You know.
And also, yeah, it's something we've talked to death about CS:GO, but there's so many particular details that you need to work out in scrims, and everybody needs to be on the same page, and it's all that, and it's like you need to be on the server. And
I'll tell you the only game, because you'll know this of it. The only game I think subs worked really well was actually Overwatch, but that's because the joke of Overwatch esports is it's 4 different esports in one. So the point is, if you have a guy who's good on one of the maps, it's not the one game style that isn't like the one on the truck or whatever the fuck that was. What was that one called? What was the one where the truck goes through you escort? There you go. Like if you're good on escort, that's different from being good on the one that's like Counter-Strike, isn't it? Like, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, no, that could work.
That seemed to work when they did that.
Specialist guys as well who are specifically
like the
good
Pine
at
guy. You should just bring that Pine guy to just shoot everyone in the head. He was just an aimbot, wasn't he? Like,
yeah, those were.
But he wasn't like the best player in the team. So the problem is, I just don't think the esports we're talking about, CS:GO, they just don't seem to work very well with subs.
Yeah, no, it's not there. It's not the same thing, guys. It's not gonna work. Stop trying to make it sports. It's not gonna be sports. We need to think differently. All right, divorce lives in Lucky's shadow. Lord Elrond calls for the Council of the Ring in Rivendell. Unfortunately, the entire North American CS:GO scene arrives instead of the allied state representatives of Middle Earth. Which 5 players would you choose as the 5 fellows of the Fellowship? Which coach as the additional wizard? And which player would be the ring bearer? Alternatively, it can be 15 players as well, since it's an American Fellowship at that point.
Wait a minute. I think here's the problem with what he did there was, I think some people are going to think he's asking us to make like an all-star team. Isn't he asking like which characters would be like the characters from Lord of the Rings? So like he wants us to pick someone who's like fucking Gimli or something. Is that what he wants us to do? Like he wants us to pick a player to be Gimli and then someone to be Legolas and all that shit.
Unfortunately,
is that the premise?
I think what he wants is for us to just come up with a funny 5-man.
He just wants an all-star team, basically.
Yeah, who's going to be your? Well, I was going to say who's your golem, but no, that doesn't work.
That's easy. Yeah, no. Wouldn't Gollum just be like fucking Daps or something? He's just a wretched creature. Just fucking, you don't even know if death would be like a mercy for this guy at this point. What the fuck's going on? You know what I mean? He's like, the joke is when Daps is there in Team Liquid, people are like, why is Daps the coach of Team Liquid? And then Gandalf just goes like, no one can know what part everyone has to play in the story.
There you go. All right, well then who's your Gandalf? Who's your wizard? Who's your wizard on this one?
It's true. Who would be the wizard for this?
Who would be the wizard of this? Because who has been a? I mean, would it be Sean Gares? Sean Gares could be your wizard.
Old school people, sure.
Yeah, we can bring back old school people. I feel like Sean Gares could be the wizard of. I mean, he didn't have the firepower, but he always knew what to do, and I feel like he could be the wizard of this merry fellowship that could guide them through, IGL their way through, and potentially win something. Get the ring. All right. Who else could we have? So hold on. We need a Gimli. Gimli would be Semphis, because both stout, strong, muscular fellows, straightforward, blunt wit, loyal to a fault. I don't
know about that one. He was the one who literally said that him and all of his teammates did Adderall at the World Championship of Counter-Strike. Like, he did tell the world that. So I don't know about the loyal. I was with you until the loyal to the fault part. I feel like he's just not loyal.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm saying, just saying.
Okay, I'm still keeping Semphis as the dwarf. Okay, who's your Boromir? Who's your Boromir? Who's your Aragorn? Who's your upright, upstanding? Who was supposed to, be the king?
I mean, Aragorn should probably be like Elise or something, right? It's like he's just supposed to be the best, isn't he? Like, in fact, I'd even say that's not even a bad shout, because one of the problems I have had with Elise is I did think there were times in his career where he had the device swag of sort of like, but I'm not supposed to be the best and have all the pressure on me. It's like, you literally are. That's like, the whole thing is your game is so good, you should be the best player, mate. You should want to be the king, Now, yeah, Heavy is the fucking head that wears the crown. You're gonna get flamed if you don't. But yeah, I think Elise is a good shout for that one. There you go.
Oh man, this is just gonna keep getting better. Now, does one of the iBuyPower guys have to be Boromir? Because you know
it's obviously Steel, because here's what happens. He betrays them, but then in the end, he also helps them because he helped the scene after he hurt it, didn't he? So
there you go.
He's Boromir. There you go.
Steel has to be Boromir. Steel has to be Boromir. Okay.
There you go. Who else is there? Legolas?
We need a Legolas. Who's a Legolas? Because I think a Legolas obviously has to be an op. So is it a Skadoodle for Legolas? We could probably go there.
Problem with that is though, Legolas was really good.
But he was just a turret. He's just shooting bows and arrows and doing gymnastics and shit. Okay, shit. Who else?
Oh, and by the way, if we're actually thinking just in all of the context, I'm going to go a different one. I think logically Gimli should be fucking Heiko. We can go old school. All I'm saying, listen, he's lost his weight now. That's cool. But in the old days,
no. Gimli. Yes, that works so
Back
well.
In the day, that would be sick, wouldn't it?
In this context, because Simple did play in North America for a period,
oh, yeah, true.
We're going to make him an honorary North American player, and that's it.
He's
Legolas and Gimli.
Yes.
Simple and Heiko.
And that even works because Legolas is obviously supposed to be from the elves, but he just joins them anyway, so that even works.
Yes, dude, it's perfect. It all works. Okay, great. So now, all right, so we got that. Awesome. Now we need
the other option, by the way, for Gandalf, even though it doesn't fit in any other context, it could be Naff, because all I'm saying is Gandalf does like smoking on that pipe. Just saying. And all I'm saying is, I don't know if Naff's ever said anything publicly, but use your fucking brain, put 2 and 2 together. Put 2 and 2 together. It's like Tarek back in the day when people were going like, there's an episode of By the Numbers where I even do this rant where, you know, that one where Tarek had like joined like fucking, I think it was when he was in like EG or Optic or something, and then he like joined like the Cloud9 part of the team speak on a game, like, and everyone was like, oh my God, lol, Tarek forgot which team he's on. It's like, yeah, he definitely wasn't high on weed, you fucking moron. Look, it's Tarek though. Look at the screen. Like, what do you think? So all I'm saying is there's something to figure out on that one. I think we've done it there, though. That's the full issue.
But okay, hold on. We were missing out on. We can forget Merry and Pippin, but
were they even in the Fellowship? Wasn't it just like the main? Were they technically part of the Fellowship? I don't know the rules on this.
Oh, did they just?
We need Frodo though. You're right. We need Frodo.
Like Frodo and Sam are part of it, right?
Yes.
So we got to come up with Frodo and Sam.
Oh no, wait! I've got it the wrong way around. Logically, I'll take this back. Forget Gollum. We'll do Gollum separately. Gollum and Frodo. No, Frodo and Gollum should be Stanislaw and Daps, because Daps is Sam. He did all the work, carried him the whole way, but then every time at the end, he's just like, you go over the line, Stanislaw, and take the ring. You win, mate. You're better than all of us. Like, the joke is even in the show. Like, you know, the thing in the show that ruins the movies, if people don't know about Lord of the Rings, is in the actual books, the premise is supposed to be, like, Samwise Gamgee is sort of like the servant of Frodo. That's why in the movie, he's always like, Mr. Frodo. But the problem is in the movie, they knew no one would relate to that. So they made it that they're friends, but then they didn't remove that language. So what's fucked up in the movie is it's Frodo just going, now, Sam. He's like, yes, thank you, Mr. Frodo. And you're like, what sort of fucked up friendship is this? So like the joke is that just is Daps and fucking Stanislaw. Like I can't handle that fucking mad relationship there where like Daps has to make the team, recruit the players, find the roles, get them really good. And then he's like, oh, I've almost won. And then Stanislaw's like, give me that here. I'll take over from here. And he's like, oh, you win, sir. You win,
Mr. Frodo. Okay.
Although maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe I can still have Daps as Gollum, because also the Gollum relationship, if you remember, was like when
a similar kind of vein.
Yeah. With Frodo, he's like, no, Mr. Frodo would never hurt us. No, not. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
All right.
We will join Valorant. We will join Valorant, and the Hobbits is like some shit. Yeah, there you go. He was in Valorant for no reason, was he? I don't know why. Fuck knows why.
I mean, we could go too long on this.
Yeah, that's enough.
Toby. What's better, the zoo or the aquarium?
Isn't it easily the zoo?
I think so too. I mean, yeah.
Here's the reason why, in my opinion, because it's actually even more egregious that you have an aquarium. Because think about this, right? In theory, in nature, a lot of animals just live in like the same area they are now, basically. Like, this bird lives in this tree. You know what? If you're like a fucking whale, you can go around the entire world, or you just an attack. Like that's fucking wild, isn't it? That's so harsh. I hate aquariums, man. I hate it.
Just the whole SeaWorld thing with the orcas. Just how utterly
horrible,
brutal that is. How they just all die of depression. I mean, nah, it's horrible. Forget it. No thanks. All right, Hanoda. Do you think it would be interesting to do a one-off tournament show match with larger teams, such as 7 versus 7 or 10 versus 10 with larger maps?
No, because I actually saw Counter-Strike when it was 7v7 and 6v6. No, basically it's just not that great. Like it's not that it's terrible, but here's the problem. One, show matches never do show anything. Like they'll have never played that format before, so they won't be good at it. It'll just be bad Counter-Strike. So the more interesting question would be, should we actually change Counter-Strike? Now, that's not terrible. Like, if people don't know, at the beginning of Counter-Strike, Americans used to play 7v7, and in Europe, we used to play 6v6. I will say, I've actually done a whole video on my channel. It's called 5v5 Principles of Counter-Strike about this. It changes Counter-Strike completely, because if you think about it, one of the main dynamics of Counter-Strike on the CT side, Semmler, is that you can never have equal numbers of people in both bomb sites, can you? Because logically, there's 5 CTs, so you're always going to have to load one bomb site up to some degree, right? And that becomes the whole dynamic of like push and pull and like see if there's someone here and spot a guy. If you have 6 people, you could have 3 in both sides. You know what I mean? Like the problem with adding people is it isn't always going to make it better. In some ways, it might reduce some of the strategy of the game. You know, it might make it easier. Who the fuck? Maybe it becomes CT sided eventually. Who knows, right?
Yeah, 7v7 or yeah, it's just then it increases the bum rush capability.
Imagine playing fucking like Inferno with like 7 CTs. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the crossfires would be utterly brutal. Forget it. It would just never happen.
Now, look, the obvious joke
You've actually
would be...
done a video on the topic, though. I was not aware that 7v7 was a thing in the past.
It was very, very early. We're talking like in the first year of the game when it was like the betas and stuff, you know.
Got it. So they were still figuring out what was going on.
But here's the thing, though. No one... This might blow your mind, though, Semmler. Nobody ever actually did sit down and look at like the different rule sets, like max rounds, charges only, like 5v5s. And no one ever... There's no one from Valve sat down and decided this one's best. It was just purely arbitrarily whatever the CPL chose. So since at the time in America, they were playing 5v5 at the beginning of like the pro part of Counter-Strike and max rounds 12, that just became the rule set. No one ever had a discussion. Like, that's why I've always said maybe we did miss a trick. Maybe we should have gone charges only, or maybe it should have been a different size of players. Like, for example, as far as I know, the reason they did 5v5 was just to save costs, because to fly like 6 or 7 people just makes everyone less likely to be able to have good teams, right? You know?
Yeah, that's why the whole issue with the whole idea. And I think actually Richard mentioned this in Overwatch, like in Four Horsemen with, I think, Tommy, when they were talking about Overwatch, like how you were just like the whole idea of flying all of those players and all that staff and all that coach from place to place all the time, perpetually. Yeah. It was just like, that was always really, this is going to be the business model?
Yep. That was always my biggest qualm with the league. Is just like, I always used to even say to Monty, no, I'm not saying like, how would a team from China come to fucking LA, play a game, then go to play someone in London, then play someone like the joke is even real sports can't do that. There's no like fucking team sport that does that. What?
Yeah. All right, cheesecake enthusiast, Daffy, Donald, Scrooge, or Peking Duck. Which
so presidents of the United States that we like. No, wait a second. Daffy, Donald, Scrooge, and who?
Peking.
Pecking? What the fuck is pecking?
It's a play. Peking duck is a dish. It's a way of cooking. It means
peking.
Duck. Or peking, yeah.
Yes. I should know, because if you don't know, this is how gangster my country is. Peking is a name, as far as I know, the British made and enforced upon fucking thingamajig. Like, I'll have to look what it's called now.
Beijing?
I think it is. Let me see.
But I thought it was Peking.
Yes, Peking is now called Beijing. You're right.
Oh, well, I'm the one who's fucking that up then in terms of pronunciation. I always thought it was pronounced Peking. Huh.
I mean, we say the problem is in England, the food is called Peking duck. That's what we say, at least.
Well, there you go, Peking duck.
And since we invented it, I'm just going to say, I'm taking credit. I don't actually know if we invented it or not.
Just flex on them. You're British after all.
So it was just a joke question, basically. Like, do we like these 3 cartoon ducks, or I'll just pick the real life Chinese food that's nice? Do I lose or win? Who gives a shit? Go on.
Who knows? Cheesecake.
This wasn't that great a question.
Peking, which do you prefer? Blaz, what in your opinion is the biggest factor that separates a great book from a good book?
I think one's greater than the other. Keep going. Go on.
One is greater than the other. I mean, a great book from a good book.
By definition.
I think it's the same thing as with movies or TV shows or any other form of media. It's whether it keeps you thinking or not. It's just the thing. Like, if you're still thinking about it a few days later, a month later, if it's still coming back to you over and over again, and maybe you rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it, then you're dealing with a great book, right?
I have an interesting angle on this one. Yeah. Basically, I think you can actually tell instantly if a book is great. Basically, what I think happens is a lot of people consciously decide, oh, I need to read this book, or I have heard this book is great. And it's like they're making themselves read the book. They sit down, they start reading. I'm not getting into it. Maybe in the next chapter. A great book. You even hear what it's about. You're like, what's this book called? Like, you remember when you told me what like Hyperion's like plot was? I was like, dude, I remember I even said to you, I said, dude, people have even recommended that book, but they never explained the premise like you did. Like, basically, like, spoiler, this will probably make some of you want to read it. Imagine a premise where I won't tell you how, but there's all these people who have to do a pilgrimage to go to where some like dark savage god like kills everyone and puts them for eternity on like a torture trip. And you have to, I won't tell you anything more. Like, you're already like, what the fuck is this
already
book? Like,
just
so there you go.
amazing.
The premise already hooks you. And this is the key for me. When you start reading a great book, it's easy to read because you want to find out what happens. Like, you're just immediately immersed. And so famously, I'll give you a classic signal that you're reading a great book. You know, if you're reading like a good book, but you're not sure about it yet. If it's like 1,000 pages long, you're going to be like, nah, I don't know about this. If it's an amazing book, you're going to be like, holy shit, this is going to be awesome. Look how much I've got to go. I've got all of that. Like that, you just know in your soul that's going to be the shit.
That's the reason why I'm rereading fucking Master and Commander for the 4th time.
I'll throw you one more in. Here's another sign that it's a great book. When it's just an average book, the second you start to get tired, you won't be able to read anymore. You'll be like, oh, I'm too tired. When it's a great book, you will make yourself stay awake for another half an hour reading because you want to get to the end of that chapter, don't you, and find out what happens.
Exactly. And that's that function of the Kindle that's so good, where you can see how much time is left in the chapter. You're just like, okay, just a little bit more. And you finish that chapter, and then you keep going because you're like, well, I can't stop there, and then and then you're just not getting any sleep. That's
actually, by the way, an underrated feature of the Kindle, because what it allows you to do that you don't think about with normal books is it sometimes makes you think like, oh, I'll stop it. Oh, wait a minute, this next one's only like 15 minutes. Let's get it actually encourages you to read more.
Keeps you going, yeah, it's great. Mosukiton, what are your favorite CS:GO moments that aren't featured in the BTN intro?
I mean, loads. I didn't make that intro, so obviously it doesn't feature loads of them. What's it? Just classic moments, he means?
Just classic moments, I suppose.
Right, here's what we'll do. There's obviously too many, so just maybe pick out like what's one of your favorite classic moments in CS:GO. You can do any time period. Remember, a lot of fans are going to be like last few years, so what's like an old school moment that's a classic for you?
I can't believe it. Happy Deagle Ace. How is that not in there?
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Come on.
Obviously, easy, low key. Here's the thing, Semmler. I'll say this now because you can handle it. Well, if you think about when we made By the Numbers, though, Semmler, was that when you were on Richard's good side? Was that when you were on the outs? What was going on? I'd have to check exactly when that intro was introduced.
Last time I was on Richard's good side, I would like to know.
Yeah, but I will say there's a massive distinction between it's not that you're automatically on his bad side if you're not on his good side, though. The question is if you're on his bad side. That's what you don't want to be. It's not if you're on his good side. So yeah, the Happy Deagle is obviously a classic. Let me think. What would I do? There's so many.
You breaking the baguette. You breaking the baguette over the.
Oh, that was a classic. Sure. Yeah, that was good. I mean, me burning Shark. That's not in there. There's a good one.
That's also actual,
like mega some classic. In-game related stuff.
The Smiths moment.
Smiths one.
And I mean, that would be fitting for the intro.
Oh, for the major
right
one,
next to you when you're doing it, and I'm losing my shit.
True. That was a good one.
What else have we got?
I mean, there's all the classic in the game moments. Simple, fucking 1v2 against Fnatic or whatever. That was one of the fucking all-time. Because the thing with that one as well is like, because that was in the playoffs of a major and Team Liquid were not supposed to win that match. That was one of those moments that was like the fucking like Neo wakes up in the Matrix. You were like, what the hell's going on? That's why if people don't know, even though it was hot takes at the time, that's why the second that match happened, you go back and watch the VODs. I'm on the analyst desk just saying stuff like, this is impossible. This guy's going to be like the greatest player ever. He's definitely going to be a Na'Vi. Like, it's going to change the whole game. Because that moment was insane. Even though it was luck, it was luck.
Keep in mind, though, if you had to listen to that clip over and over again, you would have to listen to James Bardolph commentary.
Well, the downside of that clip, I will say, is it's obviously famously, the Observer fucked it up, and then Bardolph is just essentially killing his career with ESL until Saudi Arabia bought ESL. That's what it took to get this guy back. So 2016, this is not FPL, simple. 6 years later, like, the dark gods arrive in the spaceships there, and our vassal on earth shall be James Bardolph. Like, that's all. That's the only way he got back into ESL. 6 years later.
It did. It just happened, man. It took a little bit, but we got there eventually.
All it took was $1 billion.
Hey.
To get James Bardolph back on ESL. Brilliant.
Hey, what are you? No, hold on. Next one. Cause de le Français. Favorite cheeses?
I hate cheese.
You hate cheese, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you hate cheese.
Like, as in, I'll eat food that have cheese in it, but essentially it probably should be like cheddar and in the background of the taste. Like I can eat a pizza, but I'm not loving the cheese part of it.
Sure. I'm not like
you must be loving this
cheese
shit,
connoisseur, but it has grown on me. When I grew up, I hated cheese, and now I'm actually a fan. So it'll be like, but it's simple stuff. You know, it's like a good roquefort, a good brie, even. There's also
so not Olsen then. So.
A Gruyere. You know, those are all just cheeses that I could eat ad infinitum. A good Parmesan, even sometimes, just fucking awesome. But you know, I don't know any of the special shit.
Parmesan Holmes. Remember that from that Flashpoint thing? Right?
No,
you remember that Flashpoint hype video I made where I had that bit in like that, like straight Parmesan Holmes? Like, I was so ridiculous, that whole video on it.
Flashpoint, man, it's still gonna. What could have been? What could have been? Really wonder, actually. I wonder if Flashpoint had still been running, would Face It have gone for the deal with ESL?
No.
Or you don't think so?
Because logically, I mean, here's the thing, they could have, but they were like the operator of Flashpoint and had a tiny percent, they had 0.5%. So I think at the time they would have just been priced out of it, but that's what would have been interesting, right? People don't know. Everyone sadly turned it into a thing to meme on me and all the rest. Flashpoint's like the biggest missed what if fucking chance Counter-Strike ever had, guys. Like, the joke is every problem me and Semmler and Richard talk about these last few years in Counter-Strike, Flashpoint was aimed to solve.
Yes.
The problem is, though, and people still don't get this, people are still so petty. They want to believe in their heart, Semmler. It's because I suck that Flashpoint didn't work. It's because the people at the top lied about having Astralis and did not get good teams. I've always said this, we didn't even need all of them, dude. Like, you know the Blast ESL example? I don't even need as many as Blast has. I always said this, dude. Just give me 5 of the top 10. That's all I need. I'll beat ESL. I got 0 of the top 10. What do you want? I got 0. So, yeah, whatever.
I'm still so mad how all that played out.
So
we just
sad,
got kicked in the teeth, dude.
And what a waste of money as well. Like, what a waste of money that project is. So many millions, if you don't know. It's millions and millions and millions.
But for them, you know, it's those kinds of teams. Again, it kind of circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show.
Yep.
When you got millions. All right. Let's see. It's Young Badger. Where some of your go-to first date options when you were dating?
First date, he said. I actually thought, for real, the question, which is really fucking sinister, was what are some of your go-to first aid options when dating? Like, what country are you dating in? Fucking Iran or something? Well, that's not even that good a reference anymore. But that sounds outrageous. What? No, he means first date. Right,
Yeah,
well, the problem with that
where are you
is,
going on a first date?
the problem with that is, without revealing too much, like, that's not really what, like, me and Semmler's gig, right? I want, like, the ultimate bachelors of esports, aren't we? Like, you're not really. So the problem with that one is, we're going to have a boomer reference for this shortly, because for that, it would just be something boring, like, just go to a park. By the way, I actually think probably the most underrated aspect of something like this is, this is what a pleb won't understand, Semmler. I'll give you the best analogy. You know, plebs think it's all about how cool the opening line is. It's not. It's about how cool you are. If you're cool, any opening line's cool. If you're whack, the best opening line in the world is shit. If you're ugly, don't dress properly, really awkward, and you come to a girl and say something really slick, it's not going to work. But if you're just a normal looking guy, you just go, hello, my name is August. I notice you're doing this. If she's open to it, you're going to have a convo. So, by the way, same thing, don't overthink it. Like, a great date idea for real is go to a park. Because what's great about a park is you have the choice to walk around if you want to walk. You have the choice to sit down over chat. You can have a coffee. She's surrounded by people, so there's nothing sinister about it. You can see children and dogs, and you get a sense of who they are. You're in the outside. You're walking around, getting fresh air. If you want to go, why don't we knock in this coffee shop here? You can. If not, she can go home. I think it's a brilliant sort of like open-ended date idea. And even though it sounds simple, it's just going to test if you're actually into the person. Yeah, it's not flashy, but you're not trying to be flashy at the beginning, are you? Come on.
I mean, it depends on like what your priority is. Are you just trying to meet up to bang somebody, or are you trying to meet up and have a relationship? In a relationship, like you say, in a park, you're going to get to have a conversation. You're going to get to somewhat know each other. If you're in a public location, like you're going out to the club or something, well, you're not talking in a club. You're dancing or you're doing something else. It's a totally different thing. Yeah, first go to. I mean, also, same thing. I guess you could do something. I guess this would require you having some prior knowledge as to like you share interests or something. But if you know something that you share interests, like you could go and do that. That's something. But yeah, I think a park is a pretty good idea. A good public area like that, a coffee shop, a park, something like that where you can sit down and talk a bit. Handle sober convos these days. I mean, Twisted Destiny fair, yeah. Sober convos, jeez. Okay. All right, BZ, do you have CS pet peeves such as people constantly inspecting their weapon?
Right. That's
Ooh.
interesting. I'll tell you one of mine, because
Okay.
this is actually an old school one, and anyone who knows the real old school Counter-Strike lore will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's people who do anything that is just fidgeting and can get you killed in the game. So I've got two examples from,
I know
from
exactly what
famous
you're talking
pros. One is Heaton. If people don't know, Heaton used to do that button, the quick switch, and just switch weapons constantly at that overall. Now, look, 1.6 is more forgiving. It's not as much of like a time for the gun to come out. But at the same time, if someone comes the second you're switching, you will just get killed. And he was just doing it as a nervous habit. And then similarly, another friend of mine, the American player Morto, used to legitimately, Semmler, lift his whole hand up off the mouse, his mouse hand, and do this and like wipe sweat off his hand with his hand. And I've seen him die. Like I've seen him pull up, a guy come around the corner and shoot him in like bitches. Like, so those two, you can imagine even watching those, you're like, can you stop fucking doing that? Like, it's actually really annoying when you see it. Like, you do your head in when you notice it, mate. Have you got one?
Oh, dude, it's like we're thinking exactly the same thing. The one thing that I can think of is nothing. Nothing would have this. He had this tick. I remember watching him, and he had this tick where he would take his mouse hand off of the mouse and like rub his thumb along his mouse pad. So like he'd like drag his thumb across his mouse pad and then grab the mouse again. But like that whole thing is like a quarter of a second, a half a second, where his hand is off the mouse. I was like, dude, and he was doing this throughout the entire round, throughout the entire match, just constantly. It was clearly a tick. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Like exactly what you described with Heaton, where I'm like, guy comes around the corner and you're there rubbing your thumb on the mouse pad. That's it. You're done. You're not going to live through that. So that was always something that drove me up the wall because I knew he was doing it. There's also one, Cadian also does
the thing about that's so wild though, Semmler, is there's no sports context. That would be like the guy who's like the fucking I don't know the spot. Who's the guy that is it the shortstop's the one who tries to catch the ball if the hitter doesn't hit
first base, I think, right?
Like whatever. I believe first base is when you run to there, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Whoever the guy who stands behind, it's like if that guy when it's like if there you go, catch it. It's like if you were about to pitch the ball and I was just looking around the crowd, that was my nervous tick to like, oh, was he throwing? Oh shit, like that would be insane in sports that you'd get fired instantly. You know what I mean? Like they're doing the equivalent of that. They just stood around the corner with no hand on the mouse.
Yeah, no, it still blows my mind that was the thing, that I was actually watching pros do that. It was insane. And I still see it today. Cadian has still got that left-hand tick that he does on his keyboard where he's constantly like arching his hand up and flexing his fingers. He still does that. I noticed it in one of the clips today at Blast. So it's like
weird flex.
Some of the pros have still got that going. What was that?
I said weird flex, but the only applicable use of the term weird flex that any Zoomer ever did. There you go.
There you go. There you go. All right. What do we got? Zumba. Last question. Favorite tea flavors?
Here's another problem. By the way, this is why stereotypes usually are really good, but not if you're an outlier. Like, I don't like beer. I'm not even a big fan of football, and tea can go and shove it up its own arse. Like, I'm not a big tea drinker, man. I think it tastes a bit whack.
No, it's it has to be very specific. Pomegranate.
Like I don't mind the ones that have like a bit of like, you know, the ones that have like cinnamon in. What's that called? Like chai tea or something like. The one that has like a bit of cinnamon in is not bad. I wouldn't drink it out of choice still though. I'd drink about a million other things first.
Yeah.
What's your favorite go-to brand then? What's the type you go for?
It's the like there's one sorry?
I didn't say that, I coughed.
Oh, okay. No, it's like I actually bought a box of that Jocko white tea when I was at Flashpoint.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was nice because it was pomegranate. It was pomegranate and something else. And so it wasn't aggressively sweet. It wasn't aggressively anything. It was just something like where you just want some flavor in your water, basically, you know? And it doesn't need to be anything, but it's a bit of caffeine, you know, it's an alternative to coffee. And I bought like a big box of that. And that's just been, I drink tea so seldomly that it's literally lasted up until now, where I literally drank the last one the other day. Just like that. So Jocko white tea is what I was
What I have
on
is
it
just brings me back to a sentimental place. It reminds me of the loss of the empire. So I don't drink tea because it reminds me about losing India. Same reason I don't do heroin, because of China.
Yeah, there you go. The opium wars.
Whatever. That was just a whack way of bringing that joke in. I know.
Yeah. That's why, you know what? And the thing is, you get reminded of it every day because now you live in the Netherlands.
Yep.
And, you know, what was the East India Company doing back then? I don't know. There was a lot of, trading going on.
Indeed.
Yeah. Hey, well, dude, that's the show. No more questions. So, well, you know, thanks everybody for tuning in. Of course, thank you so much for your support. Be sure to leave a like and a comment and a message and a review wherever you happen to be listening to the show. Thank you so much, of course, for the support. Wouldn't be possible without you guys. And Thorin, thank you so much again for another show, my dude. And we'll be back next week. Next week, we'll be discussing, obviously, the wrapping up, the play-in stage here of Blast. And then, of course, we'll be looking forward to Katowice because Katowice is going to be the big box office event to kick off the year. So, yeah, till then, everybody, have a fantastic time. We'll see you then.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh, my God!
Gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus! He does something!
Looking for a second, he connects in. Oh, and he